7, and we've got a special guest tonight. It is Rick Beato of Everything Music. Rick is a musician, a teacher, he's a father, he's a writer and a producer, and has a great channel. I love his channel. How are you, Rick?
Very good, Mark. Appreciate it.
And Dave, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you. Nice to meet you again, Rick.
Yep, you too, Dave.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on and to meet you as well. I feel like I know you just from watching all your videos, like everybody else does, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's that's the nature of YouTube.
Being the celebrity.
You talk into the camera, and then people. You look at the camera, people look back at you, and they think they know you. But I am pretty much exactly like I am on my channel. So.
That's the way it's got to be, right? I would hope so, right? I was about to say authentic, and then people are just going to be all over.
No, yeah, no. Can't use
Be
that word.
authentic.
Yeah, be authentic. So, it's great to have you on because I've thought of questions. I know you put up a lot of content, and you're probably working all the time on videos and stuff, I would imagine, or
Yep.
making new videos. And so, like, the first thing I wanted to know, like, right off the bat is, what's a typical week for you? Are you, like, just tell me, like, what's a typical week? Is it all YouTube or is it most?
Yes, it's all YouTube. So I haven't produced anything in about 3 years. I get up at 5:30 to get my kids ready for school. I've got 12, 10, and 6-year-old boy and 2 girls. So my wife and I make lunch and breakfast for them, and I drive my 2 girls to school. Then I come back and start working on stuff at about 9:30, and I work until, I don't know, 11, 12, 1 at night.
Right.
Pretty much 7 days a week.
And traveling also.
Oh, man.
And traveling also.
Yeah, travel. I mean, I don't travel that much. I have a bunch of trips coming up. I mean, this year I've been to London. I've been to Italy. I've been to LA a couple times. Been to New York a few times. Just came back from New York last week. So yeah, I do travel around, usually for events, things like that usually related to the channel. So.
Gotcha.
Cool.
Gotcha. That's awesome. Someone was writing that they were having a problem hearing me, which hopefully
I can hear you.
I can hear you perfectly.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm hopefully whatever I just clicked maybe fix that. But let me hear you guys also. Let me just check levels and stuff like that.
Check 1, 2.
Well, fine. Hello.
All right.
Sounds very balanced to me.
All right. I'm gonna write people and say, "Can you hear me now?" Let's see.
I usually tell people to refresh their browser sometimes.
Yeah, it could have been me. Maybe I did something. There he is, they say. All right. Okay, whatever. Well, welcome, Rick Beato, and whatever you missed, I'm sorry.
It's the beautiful technology glitch.
Shit happens. What can I do, man? It's Monday, and I worked all day. Maybe I didn't press a button. So anyway, well, Rick, welcome aboard. Thanks for joining the show. And so keep going. Tell us.
So I get up at, like I said, I get up at 5:30. I start working on videos about 9:30, 10 o'clock. And I have an assistant. He comes in about 10 o'clock, and I never have any videos finished. I usually start a video and I try and finish it in one day. So
Wow.
if I have a video that's doing well, I did a Chili Peppers video yesterday. I have a series called What Makes This Song Great. I've done about 70. It was my 75th episode yesterday. And so I'll usually take a day off after that. But I make about 4 to 5 videos a week, and I have 700 and some odd videos on my channel, something like that.
Yeah.
730.
It's a lot of work.
That's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. In 3 years, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That is. And 3 years to get 1 million followers. You must be doing something right. I mean, was it three years really just start, or was it longer than that you started?
No, it was 3 years. I put up my first video June 8th of 2016.
That's insane. That's amazing.
I had about I don't know 100 followers at the time. Mostly my family members, and then a few other people.
Right. Well, I watched one of your videos where you said I think you started with so your mom can see your kids, right?
Yeah, my son Dylan. I started in 2009, and because you couldn't really send videos easily back then, because the files were too big. Emails, you couldn't email them. So I called my brother and I said, "Hey, how do I send this video to Mom?" He goes, "You just get on YouTube, upload it, and send her a link." And I was like, "What's YouTube?" He goes, "It's good. It's a website where you can share videos. Just go up, sign up for it." And I signed up for it. I sent my mom a link. I called her on the phone, and she watched it. So I started uploading videos of my son, then my daughter when she was born, and that's only thing I used YouTube for.
Yep. I did the same thing with a bunch of videos, of which now my son's older. He actually went on YouTube and deleted these videos of him. He was like, me dancing with Michael Jackson, turning my shirt off. He's like, no, that's got to go.
I have all these videos still hidden on my channel too. But when I uploaded my first video, before I uploaded my first video for my channel, I hid all my kids' videos and everything, and then just started from there. But yeah, I did 340 videos the first year, so almost every day.
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing.
While I was producing full time.
That's impressively dedicated to.
It was. I mean, I'd be falling asleep. I made a lot of mistakes in the videos where I'd leave edits in, where I'd walk out of the room, walk back in, and I'd upload them for the morning, and then a friend of mine would call me up. He's like, "Hey, there's this. I think you screwed up a video edit. You're walking into it." And I'd watch it, and I'd take the video down and put it back up, fix it, and go on with my session.
Yeah.
So.
Well, which is probably what I'm going to end up doing after we go off. I'm going to fix when my audio wasn't working, and I'll get that all.
You just chop it out.
Right, I'm just going to chop it.
Right?
Which reminds me, do you ever use the beta version of the whatever, the YouTube editor or have you ever used that thing?
I've not used it. No.
Oh, it's horrible. It's been in beta for like a year, so. It's like, where you can actually edit your videos.
Actually, that's not true. No, I've done it a couple times. It's really counterintuitive the way it works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's really bad.
The video down just to edit it and.
Yes. Yeah. It's anytime you have to make it. Yeah. So we'll see. Hopefully it'll work. Maybe I'll get lucky. So.
I used to take videos down all the time and put them back up though. I didn't have nobody watching my channel at the time anyway. So in the first few months, I think it took me about 3 months till I had a video that hit 1,000 views.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
Yeah, it's horrible if you have to take a video down after you got a whole bunch of views and I have to put it back up again. It's just like you're just like, no, don't want to do that.
Yeah.
No way.
That hurts. It definitely hurts, but hopefully, you'll get a lot. I mean, your videos do fine, especially. I mean, at 1 million views, that's just amazing. I mean, 1 million followers, that's just an amazing thing, and it's still growing. So clearly, you're doing something right. You've got a great line of videos. I mean, the What Makes This Song Great series to me is, that's where I found you, because and it was the Van Halen one specifically. It was like, oh, okay, I can dig this, and I watched it, and then it led to, the other ones and stuff like that. So, it's really impressive. Congratulations on it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Those are fun to make. It's, about 10 years ago or more than that, somebody gave a couple different people gave me a couple thousand multi-tracks and, that I just had on hard drives sitting around. And
so
one day I actually have a second YouTube channel that I don't tell people about that I use. Well, I just told people about it, but I have a second YouTube channel that is called Rick Beato Live. And I've got about 24,000 followers on it, but it's people that started following me in the first year of my channel. So I always go there to test stuff out like to see if things are going to get pulled down and go to get ideas. So one night I said, oh, check this out. And I started playing some multi-tracks and people freaked out. They loved it. So my assistant, Rhett Shull, at the time, who got me onto YouTube, Rhett said, oh my God, that was amazing. You've got all those multi-tracks? I said, yeah. He goes, you should do a show with that. With just, we were having lunch and I said, yeah, maybe I'll call it What Makes This Song Great. He said, oh, it sounds great. Then I just did the first episode that day, put it out. So.
Wow. Rhett came up with a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's a great resource. Because I bet you a lot of people ask you where you got those stems or where you got the.
Oh my God, all the time.
Can I have them?
Can I have them? Yeah.
No, I have. I'm doing one on a lot of times now. I get them from the bands. Like I'm doing a video on XTC that I got from the band this week. I've got my friend Tim coming over, who was the bass player, Tim Smith, bass player in Jellyfish, who's really a big fan of XTC and friends with the guys. And so Tim's going to do the episode with me. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Super cool. You mentioned Brendan O'Brien, right?
Yep.
And so
I know him.
So I've seen you mention him a lot. Did you know him from like your days in Atlanta or like back in?
So I've met Brendan probably 4 times or so, and I mean I've been living in Atlanta for 25 years. He lives in California now. He moved probably about 6 years ago or so, but I mean you rarely run into Brendan in town. A couple of years in the mid 90s, he would play on Thanksgiving night at this place, Smith's Old Bar. He'd have a cover band that he played with, and he'd bring 2 Marshall half stacks up there with plexis, and he would play so loud, and it was amazing. He's a phenomenal guitar player.
Yeah, he's great.
So, so I, and I met him a couple other times, but I'm a big fan of his production, and I know Nick Didia, who engineered all of his records, and but Brendan made really most of the best rock records of the 90s.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, were you around when he was working on any of those, or?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't the studio that he used to work at, which no longer exists, was called Southern Tracks, and it was a 1-room studio, so you rarely got to go in there. I got to go in and work. I did one project there in maybe 2000, 2001, but Brendan had 350 guitars there, and
wow,
like all these amplifiers. I have an orange amp that I got that was Brendan's. It's back here. It's an orange overdrive, old orange overdrive. And one time I was working at NRG in LA, and Brendan was working with Stone Temple Pilots. And this is in probably 99. And so I think it was 98, something. I can't remember. It was in the 90s. So I heard this guitar sound, and I said, man, I wish my guitar sounded that good. And so they were taking a break, and I peeked my head in, and I saw this orange amp set up. It was in orange overdrives with an orange cabinet. So a couple of years ago on Reverb, I saw this amp, and it had a road case under it, and it said Brendan O'Brien. So I bought it. I was like, oh my God.
He was selling a bunch of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I saw that amp. I was like, I know that amp. I'm buying that. And it was, it's a killer. I love those old orange amps.
I worked on a orange OD80 amp combo for Chris Novoselic.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
What about those amps, Dave? What do you think about those old oranges?
The OD amps are cool.
Yeah,
they're definitely cool. The old ones are they got a thing about them.
Yeah, I really like those. They're so rock.
Yeah.
Is that what Tony Iommi used, or what did he use with Black Sabbath? I know I saw.
He's a Laney Clip. I know he did for a time. I think he did for a time. I've owned a couple of those. They have a built-in fuzz, and those are really great amps.
Oh, okay, I thought I saw him using an orange at some point.
He probably used orange too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you saw him a little bit everywhere back in the 60s.
Probably. So we were talking offline, and so we might as well just jump into it. You're an amp guy. You got a wall of amps. We're all amp guys. Dave clearly is an amp guy.
What do you mean?
So, what are your thoughts on the digital modeling, profiling of amps, especially because you produced amps? You know it's well present in the studio these days. What are your thoughts on the usage of it and its applications, or is there a application for it?
And you don't have to hold back.
I was telling you guys I've got 15 412 cabs, and I probably bought 5 this year. So that kind of tells you about my commitment. Now I have to have somebody help me move them when I'm moving them. I can't move them by myself anymore unless I get my hand truck. But I know how to mic amplifiers. I have Neve mic pre's, and I can make any cabinet if you have good sounding cabinets with good speakers. How much better? No IR or no amp modeler is going to sound better than my real amp, period. It's just not. My amps are all in good repair. I've got great cabinets, old cabinets, whether it's, my Marshall was 65 watt Celestions, not the reissues, the actual ones from that they put in the JCM 800s in the late 70s, early 80s. And, I've got every type of speaker combination that you can think of. And I just think that I have no need to use modelers. Now, am I anti-modeler? I'm not anti-modeler. I understand why people use them. They use them for convenience, but that's why they invented roadies. Roadies are to help people move their big stacks. And I always tell people, you got to move air. You can't move people if you don't move air.
That's a great quote.
So, and people used to be so into their sounds, whether it was Eric Johnson or David Gilmour or Jimmy Page. Everyone had their own original sound. Jimi Hendrix, Van Halen, they all had their combination of pedals they used, their guitars. Tone was everything to them. And everybody plays through, now models of Dave's amps, or model, honestly, this is that people play through the same amp models and they with the same cabinet things with the same delays on and everything. It's just like, come on, get your own sounds. Mm-hmm. People have been trying to copy Van Halen's sound from the first record forever. People try to copy, these guys take a long time to get their sounds. I worked with the singer for Fish, Trey, back in 2005 or so. He had a guitar tech that came in every day before the session and spent 2 hours going through his entire rig, making sure there was not a buzz, not anything. And it's his thing sounded immaculate. It really sounded great every day, consistent. You'd never hear a buzz, nothing. It was really, he played through a deluxe, and he had a tube screamer, and he had a real Leslie. There's just no, you can get fake Leslies. I have a real Leslie. Why do I need a fake Leslie? I don't know.
Yeah. It's convenience, like you said.
Convenience. Yeah.
It's convenience.
I don't have to move my stuff. So, my younger brother plays guitar. He plays in a huge cover band in upstate New York, in Rochester, where we're from. And he'll go out and play some gigs in front of 8,000 people or so, and it's a 70s cover band. So he one time took his Helix out. He had a Helix foot pedal and he played it and everything. And then he's like, I said, "What are you doing that for?" He goes, "Well, we don't have much time. We can just do a line check, and I know that that's going to work." But then he does the gig and he calls me up and he's like, "I'm not doing that anymore. So it doesn't take that long." He uses a Mesa Mark V, and he says it doesn't take that long to set it up. And he used to use a Marshall. What do you use? A JCM 800? No, JCM 2000 is what he used to use. But as he's gotten older, it's heavier to carry the stuff, but they got people to help him. So
I like the JCM too. JCM.
I do too.
Yeah,
It's not bad.
I like that amp. It wasn't bad. It wasn't a bad amp. The 50 watt, the DSL one, 50. That's what I had.
Yeah, the DSL, not the TSL.
Yeah, the
Right.
DSL. I have a DSL one that I got in 1999. I think it was one of the first years it came out, and those always sounded way better than the later ones, I thought.
Yeah.
Just like my, I have a 2005 or so, or maybe 2006 EVH, the first batch of the Fender ones, which
Yeah,
I
they're
think
great.
sounded better than any of the other ones that they made.
Yeah, the second channel, the second channel on that one was good. It wasn't too high gain,
Yes.
and it didn't go over the later.
Well, it's the guys
Well,
get
it seems like 3.
the guys get older, and then they want more. They want more distortion, Eddie. Just because they don't have their hearing isn't as good. I mean, that's what it is. So for it to sound right, you have to have more gain because they need more harmonic information for them to make it sound right to their ears, which they're missing a lot of 4K.
Mhm.
So you end up. Every time that they put out a new version of the amp, they always have more and more.
More gain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Except for the
It's smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and buzzier and buzzier and buzzier.
Well, I like the. I've got the 50 watt. It's like
got too much gain too.
the 50 watt white one that I have.
Channel, not the second channel, the other channel on it. Oh my god!
Well, the red channel is ridiculous. Yes, the red channel.
Yeah, you got to turn it on too.
I never use that channel. It's always on the blue channel. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I never use the red channel. It actually squeals, the red channel.
That's not good.
That's not good. Well, it's like the 5150, combo that I have over there. Those things weren't meant to be played loud for some reason. It's just like.
That could quite possibly be the heaviest combo ever made.
Oh my god, yeah.
That was just dumb.
Yeah.
Oh, what was it? 100 pounds?
It's almost 100 pounds. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When if you throw casters on it, it's got to be 100 pounds.
Man,
Yeah,
I remember those things. Jesus.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I have an old Fender Twin with JBLs in it that weighs
Ooh.
gotta weigh 100 pounds. It's like I can't even lift it over the lip of the door. It's so heavy.
Wow.
Yeah,
It's
no.
never left my studio. Well, nothing's really left my studio ever. So
where do you find all these cabs that you've acquired? Like various places, local places, Reverb.
yeah, local places, Reverb. Yep.
Reverb's dangerous.
Yeah.
Because, the way they do the searches on there, it's like, oh, let's see what's the 70s effects. Okay. Oh, look at that. Click.
I don't think I've bought a cabinet on Reverb. It's all eBay. Most of the cabinets I bought are things that I've bought from friends of mine
Oh, okay.
that live in town here and stuff.
Well, that's good.
So or friends that know other people. So it's pretty much. I mean, I bought a Silver Jubilee Haddon cab. I had a full stack. My friend Dave had the straight cab, mint condition, that he's had forever. And then there was a woman selling a half stack in town here, and I saw it on eBay, and I was like, oh, it's too bad it's not in Atlanta. And I look, and it's like, it's in Atlanta. What are the chances? So she brought it over with her dad, and I don't know why she had it, but she got it from her ex-husband or something, and I played it. I was like, I'll take it. Sounds amazing. So I got a full Jubilee stack back there.
An original Jubilee.
Original Jubilee, yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I had the reissue. I liked it. It was a good amp. I think from what I heard, it sounds really close. Dave, you said it's similar.
I haven't compared new to old, so I have no idea.
I had
haven't even looked inside a new one.
I had a reissue, and it didn't touch it.
Oh, really?
Not even close. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I got rid of it. Once I got Dave's amp, I was like, yeah, I don't really need the Silver Jubilee. At least that's how I felt. I was like, it's got everything that I want. So, but that's, Yeah, I love the amp though.
So one of my favorite videos of Rick's was the quantizing of John Bonham.
Oh yeah, that was great.
I don't remember, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's so ridiculous.
Talk about
right?
sucking life out of everything.
I know.
That was unreal.
I always wondered, those are the videos where I'm like, I wonder if John Bonham were around today, he'd totally be beat detected. What would it sound like? So I was like, I'll just make a video out of it, and then we'll see. And there were some people that said, I think it sounds better. I'm like, only a couple people, but I'm like,
really?
Yeah.
I think it sounds better.
Oh my God.
Only about 2 people or so. But
wow.
I tell you, when I put out that video and I was coming back from New York or something, and some guy goes, "Oh my God, turn on Bill Burr's podcast. He's playing your video." I was like, "What?" So I turned on Bill Burr, and he was playing. He played the video. He was talking about John. He did this long thing about quantizing and what it is. And he says this guy did it. This guy Rick did a video on what John Bonham's drums would sound like. So Bill Burr played my thing. It was back in May. He played the video of it. And played the audio of it on his podcast because he's a drummer, and so he was fascinated by it too. And he was like, "God, it sounds terrible."
Yeah, sounds terrible. And then that sort of segues into the other videos about everything to a click and everything in time and all this and how you're rearranging other people's songs. Was it a Hailstorm song or something?
Yes,
something
Hailstorm
like
and how computers ruined rock music.
Yes,
was a video.
Yes, and how I so agree.
Yeah,
it's I don't know what happened.
Bands wanted to have their bands wanted to have their music quantized. Well, first of all, labels, it used to be that a label would sign a band and then they get Josh Freese to come in and play drums. Right. And the drummer would usually quit and then they'd find another drummer. That's usually how all records were made. It was.
I'm friends with Josh, and that's exactly how it happened.
Yeah. And Josh would just be, sometimes the drummer would sit there with their head hanging down while Josh is playing their parts to a click perfectly, and so but then with Beat Detective, you were able to keep the crappy drummer, not have the band be all upset because they were childhood friends, and then fix all their drums. That's really why it happened. And then it just got to be the thing that labels didn't want to deal with having to pay session guys to come in, and they didn't want to break up the bands, and it was just too much of a hassle. So they you just have to work with what you had. So you're either editing a bunch of takes together. Once you start moving stuff around in a drum, that you gotta almost fix everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
if you listen to Black Dog, you can hear the clicks. John Bonham hits a crash and he starts clicking, so the Jimmy Page can play all the fills in between there, and then they would pop their finger off the console, and you'd still hear the last stick click each time from the counting that Bonham would do, and that's the way you do it. There's no click tracks to anything back then.
Yeah,
but then you were comparing the tempos in songs, how they changed, and how how the verse 1 was it was this tempo, and verse 2
Back in Black, 92 in the intro, 93 to 94 in the chorus, then 93 in the second verse, then 94 to 95 in the second chorus. And that's why the songs had energy, because they had ebb and flow to them.
Yes. Breathes. It's a beautiful thing. A great band playing as a band is what we love.
Yeah. I mean,
and that's what you used to hear.
You never hear things like that anymore. It's I talked to Nick DiDia about that, actually, Brent, who worked with Brendan on all those records, and he said that, he and Brendan resisted going to Pro Tools until about 2004, which was very late for people to do that. They would actually cut the tape and do a similar thing, but they would if somebody was dragging or whatever, let's cut out an inch here, and that's how people would do it back in the day. They would quantize in that way. But I mean, it was never exact. It wasn't on a grid or anything. It was people not playing to a click, and then maybe them removing a little bit here and there to make it have a little better feel or something. But it
usually wasn't the drummer. If any, maybe it would be the guitar player, or right, or would they have the drummer do that?
No. So they would do like I did a thing where Randy Staub mixed a record for me way back, and I asked him about the Metallica Black record, and I said, how many reels of tape would it take for a drum track? And he said, I think he said 16 reels of tape per drum track.
Wow.
Hey, you know what's funny? I'm gonna have we're gonna have Bob Rock on the show.
Okay, well there you go. Ask him.
We're definitely gonna ask about that one. We're definitely gonna ask about that one because I remember I was a kid. I remember when that record was being recorded, One-on-One Studios in North Hollywood, and I do believe I remember because I worked for Andy Brower's Studio Rentals at the time when I was 18 years old, and I think I do believe I delivered stuff to that session. Pretty positive, actually.
I love that Bob got Lars to play a lot of caveman fills. Caveman, do 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 do. It always sounds so heavy, and it was. I thought his influence with the band was incredible. But when they do the making of the Black Album, it's amazing how together the songs were before they recorded them, because James would be playing and singing the songs out in the live room when they're tracking them and just killing them. I mean, they really had the arrangements together on these songs.
Yeah, they were great.
That's another lost art.
Yeah.
Pre-production.
Yeah.
Do you think it's done in country music, or is that still it's even bled over there?
No, so country music nowadays is most of it, except for Dave Cobb, who's an old friend of mine from Atlanta. Most country records are now done by producers where they play everything. It's pretty much done like like all the pop records. It's Max Martinized. You have all these young guys that have moved to Nashville that are track people. That means that they play everything. Occasionally they'll bring in a banjo player or something to make it sound kind of like country, or pedal steel player, but it's all pop music basically with a southern with a twang, and but it's all, they call it pitched and pocketed, meaning auto-tuned and beat detected. If it's real drums, but they call it pitch and pocketing.
Nice.
I've done a lot of sessions in Nashville, so.
Wow. So is the whole LA scene dead from a music perspective? Dave, you could probably answer that too, but.
Oh God. I don't go out a lot, but generally speaking, I think so. I mean, I think there is some resurgence in some bands and things over in kind of Glasgow Park and Echo Park, and a little more indie-based stuff that's a little cooler, I think. But again, I'm old. I don't go out that much, so I wouldn't. As far as I know, there's no scene that I know of really going on here at all. I mean, not at all.
It's mostly like tribute bands.
A lot of tribute bands.
That's the other thing.
Yeah, tribute bands out the ass.
As your heroes die, the reason tribute bands are so popular is because no one makes music
That's
like
right.
the old bands anymore. So I often talk about this with people, and when you think of, I don't know, let's hypothetically say the Eagles or something, and you look at their catalog and their songs, Hotel California or this or that or whatever, every part of that song in your head. Every guitar riff, every I call it all hooks. Everything is a hook. The vocal lines are hooks. The guitar parts are hooks. It's a memorable riff at the beginning or drum part, or You literally know it inside out and backwards and forwards. And you know what? And not necessarily because I was the huge Eagles fan.
Mm-hmm.
You just know it. It was on radio. You heard it 10 million times, but it was such a well-crafted song, or a Who song, or, you know, you just know it in your head. I mean, I can sit here and think of a Who song and just know it all. You know, it just
right. Or clearly the Beatles
it
comes to mind with me.
It's so rare. You know, I say a good song is one that you can remember.
Yeah.
You know, that sticks in your head. Now, whether this is a genre of music you like or hate or it doesn't matter. A good song is one you can remember, and fast. Meaning you hear it once and you're humming it down the road, whether you hate it or not. You're humming it, you know, or it's stuck in your head. And that's a great song. Just doesn't.
I remember seeing a reading an interview with John Lennon one time, or it was Lennon and McCartney, and they said, "How come you don't write your lyrics down? You never see lyric sheets of those guys." And I said, "Listen, if we can't remember them, if we have to write them down, nobody's going to be able to remember them. They're not memorable. If we have to write them down, they're not memorable. You know."
Yeah, that's that. Oh my God! Touching on this, you just brought me back to when I was gigging with my band. And we were not a tribute band, but we were a cover band, and this was a few years ago. I haven't done it in several years, and but we couldn't find a singer who could actually know the lyrics. It was like in practice with the phone, the iPad, like, I even brought it up one day and just said, you know, some of these guys were completely strung out on drugs, and they still knew the fucking lyrics. Like, come on. Yes.
Before teleprompters.
No teleprompters, exactly. Nothing. I mean, come on. You know, like, you know, I don't have sheet music up in front of me. You know, I mean, if anything, I might have written down like a couple chord changes on my hand or something. You know, like, but yeah, I don't get it. But so Rick, I heard from somewhere that you were involved in Shinedown. You did some work with Shinedown.
Yeah, I worked on some of their first record. I co-wrote some songs, and I co-wrote 3 or 4 songs in their first record and produced them.
And when was that? That was like
2003, maybe, something like that. It was really just Brent, the singer. I got asked by their A&R guy if I would go and write with the singer that he had signed, and I said, sure. Where's he live? He says he lives at Ronnie Van Zant's wife's house. I said, okay, down in Jacksonville. So I drive down to Jacksonville, bring my acoustic guitar, and get there. And she's got like a guest house. And Brent was there, and he had about 5 grocery bags with his clothes in it, and that was it, and just a mattress on the floor. And he was crashing there. And the guitar player he was playing with at the time was married to her daughter. They had a kid together. Ronnie Van Zant's would have been his granddaughter. So I met Brent, and I wrote a song with them called "Lost in the Crowd." That was the first song. We recorded on a boombox, and I played it over the phone because you didn't really send MP3s, and it was a cassette. Played over the phone to the A&R guy, and he's like, "This sounds amazing. Why don't you keep going?" And then wrote a few more songs, and then we went in the studio and recorded them, and record did pretty well. Did almost 2 million copies, and I wrote with Brent. Then one more time, I wrote about 9 more songs with them before the 3rd record. They cut a few of them, but they were B-sides. Some of the songs got taken off the record. I was the first person that wrote with them, and back then. It would be whoever the last people that wrote with Brent. Those would always be the songs that would make the record. So
nice.
That's just, you know, what are you gonna do?
Right.
Even though I thought that some of my songs were far better.
The way things work, unfortunately. So when you guys were recording and you were working with them, was that all done live and traditional, or? You know?
Yeah, so I had demos that I did with Brent, because I would always do demos. Any of my songwriting sessions, I would do demos, and I'd play all the parts on them. And I'll program a drum part or something, and then we would end up just replacing the drums or something a lot of times, and it'd be all my parts on there. I hope the guys don't mind me saying that, but whatever. It was so long ago at this point.
Well, that's cool. It's a great album. That's good stuff.
Yeah, so it was fun. I mean, Brent's he's just an absolutely amazing singer and could sing anything, and it was a great melody writer too. Really good improviser. So, yeah, it was. I always forget that I worked on that record, even though I have a platinum record sitting on the wall over there. It's the only time I remember is when I walked by. I was like, oh yeah, I worked on that record.
Oh, you should do a video on that one.
I've never even, honestly, I never even think about that.
See, I told you I was going to ask you some things that.
I never do any I never do any videos. I've never done any videos really on any records I've worked on.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh well. Maybe
I don't.
If you run out of ideas.
I don't know. It just feels weird. I don't, to do that. I'd much rather talk about other people's music or teach people things, and
right.
It just seems weird for me to talk about things I worked on. I don't know why, but
that's cool.
I'd much rather talk about a classic song or some Instagram guitar player that I like or whatever, or other things other than myself.
Right.
So,
I also heard that you, I think you mentioned this, that you had worked with Marty Friedman, right?
I did. So I was in a band back in the late 90s that was signed to Universal, or actually London Sire. We got dropped by Universal, but we went on tour with Megadeth for 5 weeks. And the second day of the tour, his guitar tech came by, and I was practicing backstage, and I was playing jazz. So guitar tech says, "Oh my God, I got to tell Marty about you." So about 5 minutes later, Marty comes by and he's like, "Are you the jazz guy?" and I said, "I guess." He goes, "Come on our bus. I want to pick your brain." And I was like, "Okay." So I actually played with Marty every day for 5 weeks, and we've been friends since then. Keep in touch all the time, and
that's cool.
And I have some recordings that I did on cassette with Marty, me and Marty playing together, but I cannot find the cassette. I have so many hundreds of cassettes. I can't find them, but I love Marty's playing. He's just amazing.
Oh, he is
incredibly unique.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and his stuff with Megadeth was really cool.
Yeah,
I love it. Yeah, and just I missed him. I somehow got conflicted, but at NAMM he had a show at the same time, I think, as somebody else. I missed his show, but speaking of jazz, one of my friends, Pete Testa, asked. He said, "Why is it jazz players rarely, if ever, bend notes?"
Because they play with really heavy strings.
Okay,
and
that's a very simple explanation.
They can't bend them.
Okay, that makes sense.
If they can, it's only a half step usually. So you'll hear jazz players half step bends.
Right.
But there are people that I consider jazz players like Larry Carlton who can bend, who's one of the best, benders you'll ever hear. And he's a rock player, but his vocabulary is very much like a jazz player. Same with Robin Ford is a blues player, but with a lot of jazz influence. And these guys are some of the best, can bend strings as well as anybody.
Yeah, Robin Ford.
Geniuses.
He's amazing, Robin Ford. Yeah, really, really good. So, what do you prefer playing? What's like? Is it jazz? Is it rock?
Everything.
Yeah,
he loves it all.
I like it all. It's I just did a video last week, the 20 greatest rock guitar solos of all time, and it was fun because in one day I had to play 20 different guitar solos that I hadn't practiced ever, really, or not since the 70s. People are like, when did you learn all these? And I said, in the 70s. And because I realized almost every one that I did was between 1968 and 1981, because I had like the latest one was Neil Schon was Stone in Love, but I had everything from Kid Charlemagne, Larry Carlton to Comfortably Numb to Bohemian Rhapsody. On the ones like the blockers, people that you can't play along with the tracks, like. Right. Comfortably Numb, I had to create a whole track, all of the backing parts and everything. Same thing with the Queen.
And even when you do that, they can't block that? They can't?
No, they don't block it. AC/DC, I did Back in Black. I had to create all the parts for that.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's a pain. I mean, you have to actually play the drums, play the bass, play the guitars. I had my AC/DC. I did a video on them that I had taken down because my version was too close. The guitar solo was too close to the original, so I had to go back. The video got blocked. I had to take it down, and I had to play different inversions on the behind the solo and make them a little bit sloppier so that it would get through the filter.
You think it's a filter, or you think it's a person actually going?
No, it's all done by bots for the most part. I mean, some of it's done manually, the takedowns, but
it's ridiculous. But
it is ridiculous. I mean, I'm gonna do one where I do top 20, 80s metal solos and I tend to do, when I do my greatest ones, I tend to lean towards the people that kind of invented the genre. And not to try and go too far into the 80s, where there were a lot of my favorite players too that play, like Marty in the 80s, and but really rock guitar was invented, starting in the real rock that I think of rock guitar in the late 60s.
Yeah, around 1968ish.
Yeah, I mean that's
Led Zeppelin,
Jimi Hendrix, and it really between then and 81 you had everything happened.
Yeah exactly. Paul Kossoff.
Amazing.
Yep.
Yeah. And the variance of tones and things like that was just unbelievable. Everybody had different sounds, everybody had different setups, used different pedals. When I interviewed Peter Frampton, I remember him telling me that he's 5 years younger than Eric Clapton. I just saw them play at Crossroads, and Clapton came to sit in playing While My Guitar Gently Weeps with Peter Frampton, and Peter announced that they had never played together ever. Now Peter's 69 and Eric is 74.
Wow.
And when I interviewed Peter, it was probably about 8 months ago or so, I asked him about his style, and he said that, well, everybody at the time was so enamored, including himself, with Eric Clapton's playing, but he knew he didn't want to be a copy of Clapton because everybody was copying him. So he really, his dad was turned him on to jazz, and he was into Kenny Burrell and Wes Montgomery and people like that. So he incorporated more modal scales and things like that jazz players used into his, along with the blues, into his playing, and it made him have such an original style. But he was really humbled with playing with Eric a couple weeks ago. It was incredible to watch them play together.
Yeah, I feel like Clapton's winding down, but he just did the Crossroads special again. Did you go to that? I thought.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought you did. Yeah. How was that?
Yeah, I did. It was great.
Did he play a lot?
Great. He played both nights. He played an acoustic set the first night, played an electric set the second night, and he sounded incredibly good. Oh my God.
Good. All right, good. Because I saw him down here, and it was such an uninspiring show. Like he barely said two words to the crowd. He just kind of sat. It was a couple of tours ago when he was playing Somewhere Over the Rainbow at the end of the show. I really left feeling like, oh God, like is he getting too old to play, But I'm glad to hear it because I love the Crossroads stuff.
I mean, it's you think about these guys, they played in the 60s. 50 years ago. That's, I mean, just to live 50 years is a long time, let alone to have been an adult and playing, I mean, in your 20s and
Right.
creating these records. And I mean, these records must seem like they must have such a disconnect between when they listen to the records. I wonder if they think, did I really do that? Did I actually play Layla? Did I actually sing that? I mean, yeah, of course they play these things live, but you never know what kind of, if they're on any type of drugs or whatever, and they don't even remember the sessions or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I did a thing on What Makes a Song Great on Roundabout, and John Anderson wrote to me, and he loved the video and
wow.
said that he, none of these guys hear the multi-track since way back then. And, I go and look on videos of, and even in the 70s, Steve Howe was playing the guitar parts differently than on the record because he didn't have any reference. He probably forgot what he played and then just kind of made up something that was close to it. So, which is interesting. Frampton told me that when I said, why did you do Lines on My Face on the record, the recorded version? It's an acoustic guitar song with nothing like the song that is on the live record. He said, well, we had an acoustic version and we had an electric version. I always made the electric versions completely different. I said, like, they sound nothing alike. He said, yeah, I had a completely different guitar arrangement to all the songs that I did acoustically. And it's fascinating, that it was 70. I mean, it was just so fresh back then that people would do that stuff.
Original, very, yeah. It's sad that the music today isn't like that,
Well, I have another theory about that too. So music today, and I could be way off base here, but we talk about all these classic songs and the fantastic, crazy lyrics for some of these songs. Like you listen to, you look at the lyrics for Rolling Stones songs and stuff, and they're masterpieces.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about subjects and just real masterpieces. And I think, today you're bombarded with so much information. With the web and social media and you pretty much know a little bit about everything just from being connected to our modern day, computers and this and that. And, but I often think that some of the creativity is lost now, you even think about it. So someone wants to write a topic in their a song in the 70s or 60s, and it's about who knows? It's about traveling to somewhere, so whatever, Thailand or something. Who knows? Something gets in their head, and they have this sort of fantasy that this song comes out of. The trouble is now you just know,
right?
You know what it's like. You know what it is. I think you lose. I think it's kind of numbed your mind, and you lose some of your creativity that didn't happen then because it didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't be reached at every waking moment of the day. You didn't have an answering machine. You had to be home to answer the phone. Right. At that point in time. I mean, you're going far enough back. I don't know.
I always use, when talking about this exact subject of lyrics, Dave, I always bring up the Rolling Stones. That's always my point of reference.
Oh, those lyrics are amazing.
I always tell people Angie is my favorite song of all time. But I mean, there's so many Stones songs that are my favorite songs. But I have a theory that when I was growing up, when I was 5 years old, I went trick-or-treating with my friends that were 5 years old. And we didn't have parents that went with us. Yeah. And you had experiences when you were kids. You'd get arrested if you let your kids go out, even if their kids are 10 years old, if they went out on their own. Back then, kids growing up had all these experiences on their own, by themselves, with their friends. And they were way more mature, I think. And we're all I'm a helicopter parent. I mean, I don't want my kids going out and doing things, but it limits their experiences. And and they can't write with the same perspectives that people had back then, that that weren't connected to the entire world, like you're saying, Dave, too.
Mm-hmm.
There's no, they can see what everything's like. There's no daydreaming involved as to, or personal experience involved. I mean, I used to get on a bus and go into the city of Rochester by myself, and my parents never said anything. I mean, you think about it now, it's like, it's insane.
Right. Well, think about back then, people used to go to concerts, rock concerts by themselves, without their parents. Now it's parents have to take them to the rock concert.
That's right.
Or it's not. There isn't even a rock concert. They have to take them to the pop concert or the rap concert. Yeah. But speaking of lyrics, today I was listening to Leonard Skinner and the Ballad of Curtis Lowe. That song. That song gets me every time. It's just like, tells the story and all about, this. He's paying him, money so he can play on his dobro. Like just this. Who's thinking this stuff? That's creativity. And it's not. But I have a good, actually a good question. Kind of fits in from a good friend of mine, Ron Zussman. He loves your channel. Not a musician, so that's a really cool.
I love it.
Way to when you're doing something really broad, because you're not even appealing to the you're appealing a broader audience. Someone who's not even he just loves music, and so that's a really cool thing. He said, "Is there anything you like about today's rap music, musically, creatively, lyrically, etc.?"
I like some. It's interesting. I live in Atlanta, and I see the. I've been kind of, I wouldn't say involved in the rap scene, but I knew a lot of the rappers that came around in, like Little John and people in the late 90s, early 2000s. It's a very small community here. And I knew pretty much all the rappers from here and saw a lot of the stuff being created at the time. And they're incredibly creative people that were doing it, and there's a lot of really interesting sounds and really interesting creative lyric writing that goes on in rap music, and so I think it's probably from me living here that I've been exposed to it so much, especially me I'm 57 years old. I'm not your typical person that would be exposed to the hip hop scene, but I mean that is one of the predominant. It's funny because Atlanta was a huge place for hip hop and rap. And also you had Brendan O'Brien and Matt Serletic that were both from Atlanta, that were both doing records all the time here. And I was here, and Dave Cobb, who does all the big country, Sturgill Simpson and Jason Isbell and all those records. Dave Cobb lived here. He was in a band I produced, and I used to work at his studio all the time. So we had all this rock people here that were producers and making music. My friend Butch Walker and then there was this big hip hop and rap scene. So this was really an unusual place to very, very cool.
Yeah, very eclectic. Yeah, I mean
very eclectic.
Yeah, lots of different genres.
A lot of crossovers, and people are really supportive here musically. Back then you'd see people out at gigs all the time. It didn't matter what kind of music they were into. We'd go out and see all different types of music.
Right.
So
yeah. For me, I actually love the old school rap music. When it first came out, Sugar Hill Gang. I don't know, Dave. Did you ever listen to any rap music at all? Any hip hop or any of that stuff growing up?
No. None.
I love it.
Not one.
I love it.
Yeah.
Not one. Lots of other things, but not that.
Now, did you ever listen to Chili Peppers and like how so it kind of bled over into there, like Mr. Bungle or
all that kind of stuff. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But
okay.
Yeah, no, I didn't really. I still don't really necessarily appreciate a lot of rap, but I do like. From my hometown, Eminem. I still think he's one of the best that ever existed. There might be a few other things that's okay for me,
I love the Beastie Boys.
I mean, yeah, okay, yeah, but that was a little. It's not really.
Well, that's rock.
That's kind of rock. So you know.
Yeah, but then Run DMC. You see, Run DMC before them did some of that rock rap stuff.
You know, I was just at a festival in Louisville, and Ice Cube was on one of the stages, and you know, I got to say, he killed it. I mean, like, that was pretty ballsy, which I appreciated. Like, it was like not rock, but it had balls.
Well, you know, if it wasn't for Run DMC, Aerosmith never would have had their comeback in the 80s.
True.
Absolutely.
That resuscitated their career. And that was Rick Rubin's first hit was that. And Andy Wallace, who mixed a lot of my favorite rock records in the you know, starting with, well, he worked with Slayer in the 80s, but he did Nevermind. And then he mixed the first two Rage Against the Machine records. He mixed Helmet. He mixed Jeff Buckley. And he did, you know, Linkin Park and System of a Down, all these great rock records. Andy Wallace
is great.
Andy Wallace is a genius, and I wish I could interview Andy Wallace. I don't know any, you know.
That'd be great.
He's that's one person that I've not interviewed. Two people I want to interview on my channel that I haven't. Three people: Brendan O'Brien, Andy Wallace, and Pat Metheny. So there's three musicians that, if I could interview, I would interview.
That's actually a good question.
Well, Brendan shouldn't be that hard.
I don't know anyone that talks to Brendan. So
Well,
if anybody knows Brendan that's watching this,
about that.
there you go. But I'd love to interview Brendan. I'm a massively big fan, and he would get a great interview on my channel.
Yeah,
So,
That's cool.
I'll let you know.
cool.
Yeah, I'd say my top.
I worked with Brendan on an Offspring record that
cool.
he did, Conspiracy One record. I got a platinum record for that on my wall.
Nice.
So, and that kind of leads into something else that we touched on before we started this. We're talking about anything with programming, and you're sort of out. You know, if it takes too much time. This was along the lines of Kempers and XFXs and things like that. If it takes more than a minute, I'm done.
I'm with you.
I mean, I'm okay with, you know, like an effects pedal or something, programming delays or things like that or something like that. But if it takes more than a minute to change your tone, no. So the funny thing is, recently, because I've worked with the Offspring for years, recently, I mean, as in a week ago or so, weeks ago,
Okay,
I went to a production rehearsal they were having because they wanted to work on their guitar sounds a little bit, and they hadn't done that or had even a production rehearsal in years, since maybe I built the rigs. And these are rigs that revolve around an Axe-Fx.
Okay.
They used to have two rigs and amps and everything, but revolves around an Axe-Fx. So I'm there with Bob Rock. The two of us are tweaking the rigs together, which is an interesting thing in general. But he's really looking at the editor and just kind of scratching his head on how I at least am a little more familiar with it and can get around on it a little bit more. And you know, but what literally, like, you're just trying to use the mouse and make the knob turn on the screen, which is the easiest way to edit the thing. So it's a lot easier than sitting there pushing buttons on the front. But even that is like you'd miss the knob and then you'd go too far, and then you're just like, because you were doing it on laptops, so you're doing it on pads instead of like a real mouse. And so it was like, I can't believe it's taking this long to just dial this sound in. I mean, We're just sitting there laughing at each other. It's like, if it was an amp, it would be done in literally 10 seconds.
Right.
A little more trouble. Okay, a little more presence. Okay, it's done.
Right.
Yeah.
It's information
And I'm
overload.
like, is this really all worth it?
It's not. I mean, I think.
No, I agree.
Yeah, I don't think it's worth it. I think, you know, If anything, the one thing I do like about the Kemper is like I can just go in and just kind of turn a couple knobs when I want to just mess with it just for fun. I can turn a couple knobs and get a good tone, and that's it. You know, I know some people are like, oh my god, like just got to go into these editor things and mess. You know, it's just the signal chain and all of these things you got to mess with. It's crazy. So tell us more about that session, Dave. I'm curious.
About which the session, the Conspiracy One session?
No, the working with Offspring recently.
Oh, just now, just
Yeah,
2 weeks ago. So I mean, well, we basically, literally, Bob and I went through each of the guitar rigs, and their backup rigs also. So they have the B rigs there also. So we went through each of the guitar rigs and dialed in a better guitar tone than what they had been using. Because it hadn't been touched since I did it, and that was like 7 years ago.
Wow.
And they had changed some stuff over the years, so it was really out of whack to what originally was done. So what was originally done was gone, because I originally had actually done this by ear against their original tube amp rigs at the time. Dialed it in so it would be mimic as close as humanly possible to that rig. And they're still using live cabinets with it, so like real guitar cabinets. So at least it's a little bit of a better thing than just say, you know, in-ears or all direct. So we just went through everything, including the bass rig. Just everything. Backup guitar player, three guitar players and the bass player, and Bob was even there listening to the drums and stuff too. So just dialing it in, you know, just getting it to sound good.
So is he going to produce them? Is that what
he's been producing them for a bunch of records.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he's done two or three records with them already.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, we have to get him on the show. We're working on that.
Yeah.
But
he said yes. So,
awesome.
So he's coming on the show. I mean, I just gotta get with him now and try to schedule something.
That's perfect. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So Pat Metheny is another one of yours, right, Rick?
Yeah, I saw Pat play in the 70s and was always a big fan of his. And I actually interviewed his drummer, Antonio Sanchez, last week in New York. I had him on my show, and Antonio played with him for about 15 years, but Antonio also did the soundtrack to Birdman, which has an amazing drum soundtrack. He's one of the best jazz drummers in the world. And but I've written to Pat, 5 or 6 times, never got a response. I have his email. I wrote his manager, publicist, nothing. He hates YouTube.
Yeah.
He absolutely hates YouTube. He has every video taken down before like 1992 or so, or 1982, something like that. Everything after 82 to the present he has taken down.
Wow.
So, I mean, he's really anti-YouTube.
That's too bad.
But, you know, if you go on YouTube, Brendan O'Brien, there's one interview with Brendan O'Brien. One. And there's no pictures of Brendan, almost no pictures of Brendan on the internet. Nothing. There's nothing. It's like these guys don't exist. Andy Wallace, there's a couple interviews, or, one interview he did with Mix Magazine, online only. And then he did Mix with the Masters, and he has an interview out with that, which is interesting, but it's not really in depth. There's really no interview of him being asked questions by someone that actually is familiar with his work. And that's why I want to interview these guys, because I know their work, and I want to really ask them specific things. They were there at these sessions,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I want to have. I'm totally drawing a blank on his name. He's in Bon Jovi right now. Dave, you know him. Not Phil. What's the other?
John Shanks.
John Shanks. Yeah, because he worked.
Love John.
Yeah, he worked on the Van Halen album, A Different Kind of Truth.
Yes.
And it seems like he's been like gagged to not ever talk about that. Because there's like one interview where he has and I would love to have him on and talk about that somehow.
He probably can't talk about it. That's
Yeah.
He might not. I can say one thing. Oh, he did say he needed a lot of therapy after.
That's the quote. That's the quote that he said, basically. So I mean,
Like a lot.
that opens up for so many questions. Though. Why? Like tell us why.
Oh,
I'm sure I know why.
I know
but,
some.
Yeah.
I know some. Yeah, another interesting thing was a funny story. Well, maybe I shouldn't talk about that. Speaking of Randy Staub was going to mix that record.
Oh,
And
really? Mix the Van Halen record?
Randy started mixing that record,
Okay.
and he didn't finish. He left
Mm.
on his own doing.
Was it who? I'm trying to think who mixed the record.
Ross Hogarth in the end.
Yeah, Ross did. That's right. I remember that.
Mm.
Yeah. Maybe that story's for another time, but
Okay.
but yeah.
Yeah, it's well. Which
Randy's a good. Randy's mixed some incredibly great records. One of my favorite records he mixed was the Black Gives Way to Blue Alice in Chains record. That's probably one of the best guitar sounding records I've ever heard.
Yep. Probably one of the best sounding records.
Yeah, one of the best sounding.
A lot of
records.
years. At least in a lot of years.
Yeah.
Which album
years.
is this?
I mean, Black Gives Way to Blue was the first one with the new singer William Dafoe, and Nick Grasky-Lennon's produced it. Randy Staub mixed it, and it sounds phenomenal. Oh my God, the guitar tones,
Crushing.
the bass tones, the drum tones, crushing. And right from the first track on, it just, I mean, they had so many. They'd layer these guitar sounds, and everyone would be so perfectly recorded and speak. And the drums were monstrous, and the bass had huge low end, and it's just, oh my God, it's a freaking masterpiece sonically.
Whenever I want to listen to a new set of studio monitors or something, I put on Looking in View on that record, which is just crushing.
Oh.
And I can tell right away if something sounds right out of my speakers if I just put that record on.
Wow.
And the funny thing is how I work with Jerry and I do all his rigs and stuff, and obviously he has a signature amp with us and things like that. So I did his rig also back for the Bones record back in the early 90s. So I did his guitar rack back then. Then no contact for a million years. Then a sound guy friend of mine was working with Alice again. This is right just beginning for this Black Gives Way to Blue kind of thing. And Tom Abraham, he called me and goes, yeah, I'm working with Alice right now, and Jerry needs some help with his guitar rig. He wants to, he needs some help again. I go, yeah, I did it a long time ago. I know exactly what, kind of thing he looks for and this and that. So anyway, I wind up doing his guitar rig and this and such. And I remember sitting in his Cadillac Escalade at the time. This album's not out yet. And him playing the final, mastered version of it in his Cadillac Escalade. I just remember sitting there and listening to the drums and the snare and everything. And I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. This sounds great. And he had loud in the car, and I'm like going, holy crap, it sounds good.
Yeah, I mean it is one of the greatest sounding rock records ever. And I wish more people knew the record. I mean the single did well. The first single they put out,
Check My Brain,
yeah, that did really well. But the album tracks on it are just phenomenal.
I agree. Man.
Well, you know what? I'll be downloading the second.
And then, Mark, if you don't have that record, it's crushing. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. I'll be getting it.
And then the second record Randy mixed also after that, which was the Dinosaur one, Something Gives Way to Dinosaur, which had some great songs on it too.
Yeah.
And it sounds similar. Not quite as good, but very similar. Not quite as crushing, but you can tell it's Randy that mixed it. Hands down, you can tell Randy mixed it.
Yeah.
And then the funny thing is their new record, Randy didn't mix. Rainier Fog or whatever is the new record, and that's Joe Barresi mixed.
Joe Barresi did, yeah, that's right.
strikingly different sound.
Yes, totally different.
For me personally, nothing against Joe. Joe's great. For me personally, I much prefer Randy Staub for their sound. But there's some cool songs on the record too.
Yeah, I think that first record though, the best heavy guitar sounds, hands down. I mean, I can't. If I had to say, I can't think of another record where the guitar sounds are that amazingly good. Just beautifully recorded and just incredible sounds, tones. Oh my God!
I'll have to hear it.
I agree.
Because some of my favorite guitar tones are Van Halen related guitar tones.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, what are yours, Dave? I mean, clearly this is one of them.
Oh man, favorite guitar tones recorded. There's so many though. I mean, of course, Van Halen is one, but I'll get it down to specifics. Van Halen 2. Not Van Halen 1, not anything else. Van Halen 2 specifically. I mean, there were some other good ones, of course, in there, but Van Halen 2 specifically, it just sounds like the amp is going to blow the cabinet up. And I love the overtones of that, and it's just and that thing was just chock full of great songs. Other players so my area, I grew up in the 80s, so for me, all those great guitar guys who all had their own sounds. So, you had your Eddie Van Halens, you had your Warren DeMartini from Rat, who had a fantastic guitar tone. You had King's X. Love King's X.
Yeah. So the record that Brendan did, Dogman, is one of the best sounding records. Brendan did that, and the guitar tones, the drum tones, everything are phenomenal. Ty Tabor's guitar sound on that record is so good. God.
That's a good one. I also like the Gretchen record.
Gretchen record's amazing.
Love that. That's when I first introduced to them, really.
Yeah.
At least one record from Dokken, George Lynch did. At least one of them, and that's the
Tooth and Nail for me.
No, not for the guitar tone. I think whatever has Unchained the Night on it or whatever, that has just a fat, juicy, great Marshall-y kind of great, unique tone. But you're right, they all had unique tones, different, and even when I think back to that, it's like there was also AC/DC when I grew up, and so there's that guitar tone, and there's Van Halen, and there's that guitar tone. Ty Tabor had his own sound. George Lynch had his own sound. Warren DeMartini had his own sound, and it goes on and on. There are a lot of stuff in the 80s that was kind of generic and not like a signature tone that were still decent. And then also older stuff. So like a lot of Aerosmith stuff. I loved how guitar sounded. Toys in the Attic and stuff like that.
Oh my God!
Amazing records. Along with, of course, Jimmy Page. That's Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
Big, huge fan.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan too.
Dave, was there a variance in amplifiers by the 80s that people would be playing some amps from the 60s, from the 70s, from the 80s, and then things that might have been out of tolerances, and so people. Just the variation from amp to amp was so great that they it wasn't, everything was still hand built at the time, probably, or a lot of things were. I mean, there?
I don't know if it's so much that. I mean, I think all these tones were created because the lack of options. So you had essentially 4 input Marshalls, up until 1980. 70, maybe 76 or 7 was the first master volume Marshall.
The JMP, yeah.
It was a JMP, but it was an early version of a JMP, so it still looked like a 70s amp, but that was the first iteration. But then the square switch one, so that's basically when the JCM 800 circuit came about.
Yep.
So so when I was a kid, so the amps you had, if it was a Marshall, you basically had a JMP or an older 4-input amp, which was very loud. Or I guess later you had a JSOM 800, which is a JMP. It's the same.
Same thing.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Except a little bit better transformers. The funny thing is, when the JSOM 800 came out, I remember this distinctly. When it came out, it was actually known to be kind of shitty. Now everyone reveres it, but it was known to be sort of shitty compared to the old amps. The JMPs, even though it was the same circuit, were cooler. They were better. And they had better transformers, and that's why. But the 800 was crap, and now the 800 is revered, which is interesting. So you had these amps. So the early amps, no gain unless you cranked them on 10. So, people were experimenting with things to boost them. This started way back with Jimi Hendrix and just fuzzes and fuzz faces and tone benders and different, Jimmy Page used a tone bender and
treble booster.
Or treble boosters. Yeah, treble booster's a big thing. You put a treble booster on an old 4-input amp, cranked, and it's just vicious. It sounds, that's like the early, Judas Priest stuff and stuff was all like old Marshalls with a treble booster. And so all the Brian May stuff was a Vox with a treble booster.
Yeah.
And Brian May would also be a real signature guitar tone. Even Judas Priest was a real signature guitar tone.
Yeah.
So they all created their tones out of what they had to work with and how they could configure it in some crazy fashion to make what they liked, So, if you fast forward a bunch of years, so now, including my amps, I mean, now you have these amps that can do gain and can do this and that and can sound great, but a lot of people buy the same amp, they all sound the same.
Right.
So in the 90s you had rectifiers, right? So rectifiers were huge in the 90s. Everyone had a rectifier. Well, guess what? Everyone also sounded basically the same.
That's right.
And then some of the older players that had this old stuff got rid of their old stuff and got new stuff, and they play a rectifier now, and you're like, oh God, what happened? No, no, it's gone. What happened? And I don't know. I just think you just didn't, you had to create your own thing. And also you didn't have the internet. You didn't have a million people telling you how to do it. So you're just, well, if I series this into this, I put this, George Lynch was telling me he had there was this Tascam Porta Studio thing, thing that he figured out that if he plugged into it and put it into the front of an amp, like through it, it would do this crazy gain thing and boost the amp in a certain way. And I forgot how he said he did it exactly, but he didn't let anyone know about that. And he would hide it under the console with Michael Wagner and stuff, and no one knew it was there. But he was plugging into the front of the amp to boost it, and all this crazy stuff. Well, that goes back to Richie Blackmore too. So you had Richie Blackmore with a tape machine also going into the front of the Marshall Major or something, and that was boosting the amp in some way. This is really just barely remember that, but yeah.
Yeah, I went backstage at Crossroads, and I was looking. They had all the gear lined up for the bands ready to go on, and I saw Jeff Beck's rig and Peter Frampton's rig next to each other, and Frampton was playing through an early 70s Marshall, it looked like, and my friend Peter Stroud, who lives right here in my neighborhood. Peter's a great guitar player, and I asked Peter, I said, did you see their rigs? Yeah. And I said, do you think that's what Frampton played through back in the day? He said, very well could have been. It was early 70s Marshall. And Beck was playing through he had 3 amps. He had 2 Marshall hand-wired plexis with checkered cabinets, but newer ones. And then he had a 50-watt, I don't know if he had a 50-watt JMP maybe that he played through that was front-facing. The other 2 that were mic'd were back-facing. But it was interesting to see people's rigs and it was great seeing real amplifiers and things like that. And the guys all had great tones. You know, I mean, Jeff Beck though, it's like he played through anything, sounds the same. Yeah. I mean, I watch his hands. You're like, wait a minute,
he's a Martian. He just doesn't.
It's like, where do those sounds come from? You can hardly even see him use his whammy bar, and I'm looking at his left hand, and all these crazy sounds are coming out.
He's so amazing, so amazing. One of my favorite performances by him was the Ronnie Scott video that he did.
Oh yeah,
I love that. So what kind of stuff did he play? Was it more blues based, or was he doing his classics? Or
trying to remember what he played now.
That's cool. Just curious.
Jeez, I'd have to think about it. I can't remember what songs he played on his. He played like. He only played about 6 tunes. Each person, like Frampton, played 3 songs. I remember he played "Do You Feel Like We Do" and "While My Guitar Gently Weeps." And I can't remember what else he played. And yeah, it was. It's hard to remember. I was just mesmerized by watching him play and just.
Yeah, he's amazing.
You know, just you hear the sounds come out, and you look at his hands, and you just can't quite. Like, wait a minute, is he playing a guitar? Like, how does that? It's unbelievable.
Yeah, he's so unique, such a very unique player. I mean, he's playing. You know, Jeff Beck is playing when you hear him. That's just one of those guys.
I did a video called "The Guitar 1929 through 1969," and I think that's the one. And my brother called me and we were talking about all the performances in there, and he goes, "You know what the best playing was?" And I said, "What?" He goes, "Oh, Jeff Beck." And I was like, "Yeah, I think that was the best clip I had in there. Maybe it was like 70 to 79 or something." But he's like, "Yeah, nobody sounds like him." I said, "Yeah, it's true. Nobody sounds like him. Yeah. Like nobody really sounded like Hendrix. I mean, really all these guys. I mean, Clapton. They all had their own kind of unique playing style, but Jeff Beck did things that nobody really could mimic. Mm-hmm. That was the thing. People could kind of mimic things that Clapton played, phrases, things like that, but Jeff Beck his playing was so unique. It was it's impossible to really mimic without it sounding just like him.
It's interesting,
and just never does.
Yeah, but he almost seemed like he was tamed in the Yardbirds because he wasn't as flamboyant or in that type of way that he was playing in the Yardbirds. He kind of fit that mold. I think I've said this story before. I don't know if you've ever heard of the guy who was the manager of the Yardbirds at the time is Giorgio Gomelski. You ever hear? He actually was the early manager of the Stones. Also,
okay.
He owned this building in Manhattan, which was a band practice building. And my band when I lived in Manhattan, we used to practice in there all the time. And he had gold records on his wall, and he would tell us his story, his days of working with the Yardbirds and stuff like that. But yeah, just interesting how Beck just completely changed once he was out of the Yardbirds. You know, but anyway, let's go back to. I actually have a question from my cousin Randy. I want to throw out a shout out to Randy. He said, "Have you ever written a song for someone else and then regretted that you didn't keep it yourself?"
Me? No.
No.
I only write songs. I only wrote songs. I've written a lot of songs. I've had a publishing deal pretty much on and off since the early 90s. I never wrote songs for myself. I only wrote songs with other people for their own records. So, because I'm not a singer, I never felt like I was compelled to write songs other than with people that were singers. So,
okay,
there's nothing I could do with them. That's why, so you write a song and I couldn't sing it. So,
right.
I was never inspired to do that. Okay. But I love writing songs. I mean,
Mm-hmm. But just no regret.
No regret.
Here you go. No. We have a super chat from Modern Vintage. Thanks, man. Appreciate you watching the show. And thanks for everybody who's watching the show. We've got tons of questions and people in the chat. We will get to your questions, I promise. Rick, we're actually going over on time. Oh, no, we're actually at a 90 minutes now. How you doing? You got more time?
I'm great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we got 216 people watching. And
nice.
Yeah. So, hey, everybody, thanks for watching. So let me get back to the super chat. He said, Rick and Dave, are there any artists and guitar tones in gent modern metal that you think are big influences like Korn with 7 strings regarding new metal?
I mean, for me, I know the guys in Periphery, and I thought they've had some really good guitar tones on their records. And Misha has a great, Misha and Mark. I mean, all the guys, Jake, they're all great players. And even though they use, they'll use Axe effects and everything. They will put pedals in front of them, and they spend a lot of time with their tones. And they typically have very tight tones and very tight parts and everything. So, yeah. So, I mean, bands like that, I don't think that they like the term gent necessarily, but.
Yeah, I would agree. Periphery is good. Frankly, I don't listen to a lot of gent and modern metal. So I'm kind of out on this. I understand what you're talking about with like Korn and 7 strings, though. With back when that first kind of hit, that was a huge. I mean, they were huge with that kind of tone.
I was first time I met Misha, I interviewed him for my channel, and we were talking about. He has a pedal called the Horizon device that is basically it's a high pass for the guitar before it goes in the amp. And I always used to do that with low tuned guitars. I'd worked with a lot of bands that tuned down to B or had 7 strings. And I always would put something like a tube screamer or an EQ pedal in front of it, because the amps would always just fart out, hitting it with all that low end. They just couldn't handle it. So you just would shelve it before it goes in the input, and it sounded a million times tighter. Mm-hmm. Even those low notes, and people didn't realize. A lot of people trying to record these low tuned guitars without anything in front of the amp, and it's like these amps weren't designed for low Bs to go in the. Yeah. I mean, Dave, you're the expert on this stuff.
Yeah, no, that's true. Well, here's the basics of it is this: the thicker gauge string you have on your guitar, the darker and bassier the guitar is going to sound. Now, it just doesn't matter. If you put a set of 11s on a guitar that you normally have a set of 10s on, it gets thicker and bassier. And to the extreme, it gets much thicker and bassier.
Yep.
And in turn, you're just kind of splattering that first tube stage. And it makes total sense to high pass going in, so that doesn't happen. The funny thing, and this is something I've always said that's kind of interesting too. So, everyone, now this is going the opposite direction. So a lot of your great guitar players like Billy Gibbons and Tony Iommi and all this stuff use very thin strings.
Yes.
So they used 8s on a lot of stuff.
Jimmy Page.
Jimmy Page too.
Yeah.
And if you think about a stock 4-input vintage Marshall, when you crank it, some people can deem it as maybe muddy, maybe not super tight. Depends on the player that actually is playing through it. I've noticed too. I've noticed players, from one player to another player, their hands can have a different amount of bass in them. It's very, very interesting to watch, because one player will play through something and it'll sound muddy. The next player will play through that same 4-input Marshall, and it sounds plenty tight and fine. Something to do with their right hand and how they mute and how they attack a guitar. So, everyone always comes back. Guitar players always seem to come back, still to this day, to the Van Halen thing, right? How did he get that tone and this and that? And part of it was the fact that he had nines on his guitar, but not 9 to 42, 9 to 40. They were Fender bullet strings, and it was 9 to 40, so it was even lighter on the low strings. Well, guess what? You put that kind of gauge into a Marshall, there's not much low end there.
Right.
So it sounds tight.
Yes.
It sounds tight. And so I don't think you really can capture that tone even with an old amp or any way you're trying to capture that tone without those light strings.
And it's nine's a half step down too.
Half step down,
Right.
9 or some sort of tuning close to that. Some of those songs aren't exactly tuned to pitch.
Right.
I was talking with I talked to Dweezil Zappa last week, last week, and was asking him about we were talking about Eddie, and then about string gauge and about this exact topic, and I said, "Is it true your dad used 7s?" And he goes, "Yeah, well, he had like 7 to 38."
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And he said he had banjo strings on the top. And we talked about how all the old guys back then, well, they were young guys. Billy Gibbons, same thing.
Strings.
He's like, everybody used 8s or lighter. That was just what they did. And I would have bands come in here that I'd produce, and they would be tuned down to C, and I'd take my Les Paul and tune it down to a drop C or even lower, and with 10s on it or 9s. And they'd say, and I'd play it, and it'd be perfectly in tune. And they'd say, "How do you do that?" I said, "You just have to control it with your left hand with the pressure. You can't press too hard, and it's all about feel. And these guitars can be tuned way down and still be in tune. Mm-hmm. It's all about your technique."
Well, you can also not hit. You have to change entirely how you strike the guitar with the pick, the gauge of pick you're using.
Yep.
You can't use a quarter thickness pick with strings that light. It doesn't work. Right. And now I'm not so sure if everyone, but I gather that lighter picks were used also with a lot of these players.
I think that's true.
Mediums or maybe even thins.
Yeah.
Which makes sense with the string gauge. Yeah. Another interesting thing that when the first Wolfgang guitars came out with Eddie, and even with the Ernie Balls, the frets were pretty small, the very first ones, And the interesting thing is, if you really think about how he uses, what string gauge he uses, and it's tuned down a half step generally, it makes sense to have the smaller fret, because you're not pushing down on the string and pulling it out of tune.
Right.
Too large of a fret with that light of a gauge string, you better be careful on your technique. Mm-hmm. And it kind of dawned on me one day. I'm like, oh wait, that makes total sense. That's why.
Well, you used to hear people do minor third, major third bends all the time too. Well, you can't do those with freaking 13s or anything. These guys were using incredibly light strings. That's how you get those crazy high bends. Jimmy Page and Stairway, at the very end. And I mean these.
Well, the whole trend stopped with that once Stevie Ray Vaughan came around. And everybody's like, "Oh, he's using 13s,s," or
But
it sounded massive. It sounded amazing.
I heard that somebody told me that Stevie Ray, that he started having problems with his left hand later on, near the end of his life, and he actually went to lighter strings. I don't know if that's true or not, or if anyone knows anything about that, but I heard that he started getting had problems with tendonitis in his left hand from using those really heavy strings, and so he actually went to lighter gauge strings.
Dunlop 6,000 bass frets, big frets, big heavy strings. But if you watch a bend, it just freaks me out every time. I'm like going, I know how thick that string is.
Right. It's like a feat. It's like, wow, it's like a strongman comp. Yeah, just amazing.
And the other funny thing too about that, the interesting thing is, Ed used those light strings, but if you ever shake his hand, the man has a death grip. His hands are so strong, and it's really interesting that he can yet keep everything in
Well,
tune.
he must have a big reach too, Dave, because I did the Ice Cream Man solo was in one of my top solos of all time, and the opening lick. So it goes from 12 to 16 to 19. It's not tapped. So I called up Dweezil and I called up Phil X, who are good friends of mine. And I said to Phil, I was like, dude, can you play the Ice Cream Man solo? And he goes, man, that first lick is really hard. And then I was like, he's like, why, are you doing it for a video? And I had Phil played on a video of mine a few weeks before, and I was like, yeah. He goes, yeah, that might be a little tricky there. He goes, I think he said you should call Dweezil. I bet he knows the place. So I called Dweezil and I'm talking to him. He's like, man, that first lick is really hard. and you see Eddie, was 23 when he's doing it, and there's only one video on YouTube of Eddie playing it, and they immediately cut away from him when he's playing the rest of it, because Van Halen was really particular about cutting away when he's playing stuff. But the first lick, he brings the guitar way up near his head and he plays it. Yeah. But his hands must be pretty big, because he has no problem grabbing that. And he monstrous stretch.
He can take it, his two outer fingers, and just like stretch the living. I've watched it in person, and it's just like you look at it, you're like, ow.
Yeah.
The other person that can do that crazy well is Jakey Lee. Mm-hmm. He can the stretch that he can do. And if you watch, if you ever watch, there's a video where he was at a clinic or something, and he was showing how all the people get Bark at the Moon and other things he did wrong. And he's showing, well, most people say it's played like this. Well, it's not. And he explained, but you watch him do it, it's just painful. Yeah. Looks painful.
Yeah, he would stretch his whole hand down the, yeah, it was crazy. Have you ever had wrist problems, Rick, or as a musician?
Only, it's funny. I've only gotten tendonitis a few times. I have an old Gibson Country and Western 1957. I have 13s on it. So sometimes I do sessions where I play a lot of G and C add 9 and E minor, with playing the B and E string at the 3rd fret, and I would playing a bunch of songs like that. I get tendonitis and start getting tendonitis in my elbow, but luckily not really. But the things like that, that thing on Ice Cream Man, I watch Eddie and he plays it between his first and second finger, and I can reach that. And when I was younger, I no problem I could play that. But as I've gotten older, it's I have to do the stretch between these fingers. It's easier as you get older. But yeah. But I'm lucky that I haven't had any problems or anything like that.
That's good.
I have tendonitis in my right, or I have like some arthritis in my right thumb. So. If I try and do a Metallica thing where a lot of downstrokes and everything, I just can't do it anymore. I can't do super fast downstrokes. I don't know how James Hetfield does that anymore.
He's a monster. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, that's interesting. So Scott Ian, who also does the crazy downstroke stuff.
Yeah.
Scott was telling me when he started to play with his wife Pearl. In her band, he would have to do a lot of more strummy stuff, and more stuff that was just anti his style. And he goes, that was painful. So he was having problems with that, because all his life has been the downstroke thing, and he's like a machine.
Oh yeah,
machine.
Yeah,
he's like one of the best. Sitting in a room with him while he's playing that kind of stuff through an amp really loud is just totally entertaining to watch, because it's just such like a machine gun going off. I remember a few times when we've done stuff together, and it's just like watching him like that, I'm like, damn.
People that can do fast downstrokes like that, that's really amazing. I'm jealous of that now that I can't do it anymore. Literally for me, it just gets so painful. I have no endurance with it. But you see these guys so fast. It's unbelievable.
Well, through the show, a company reached out to me, Dave. I think I mentioned this to you. They were like, hey, we do these wrist grips, these wrist straps. If you ever have any problems with your wrist, if you like it, maybe you'd mention it on the show. I was like, all right, sure, send them over. And they sent them over, and I actually really liked them. So, and I actually had some wrist problems just a couple weeks ago, and actually it wasn't even a couple weeks ago. It was just when I was sick, and I was sick the other day, like last Thursday or Friday, and yeah, 'cause I went to get a flu shot. By the way, sorry for having to reschedule with you.
Yeah.
So, but I ended up getting like really sore in my wrists, and like I started having this really weird reaction to this flu shot. Like my joints were starting to get stiff and everything, and I was feeling like this. It was ridiculous.
I've never had one, nor might I ever.
Well, after that, I told my wife. My wife's the one who's always telling me, "Go get your flu shot. Go get your flu shot." You know. So I was like, "Okay, okay." You know, and I always do it, and I've never had a problem. And this year, it was just like, wow. Like within an hour of leaving the doctor's office, I already started feeling like very weird. But anyway, I wanted to mention Wrist Grips. Check out this company, wrist-grips.com. They sent me this this product, and it just goes on your wrist, and I was like, oh, cool. So I've got 2 of them, and it actually helps. So, which I thought it was actually kind of a nice thing that they sent it to me. So, but I want to go back to a question, Rick. That is there a favorite Van Halen tone of yours?
You know, I love a lot of the tones on Fair Warning. I mean, really, my you know, the first couple of records, the guitar tones are just. I mean, that's what I grew up with. I was in 10th grade when the first record came out. That is really my. You know, I remember my friend bringing in. Have you heard the new Van Halen record? I said no, and then this guy Matt, he came into we were in a band together, and he brings a record in. He had his stereo set up, and he puts on Eruption, and I just, what is that? Oh my God, what?
And were you playing guitar at that time?
Yeah, oh yeah, I was in a band at the time. Yeah, I was in bands in the 70s, and when you hear that come out, and you're 16
what are we
years
gonna
old,
do now?
right? Like, oh my God, it was you're thinking. I was thinking like, yeah, I'm a pretty good player and everything. Then I hear Eddie, and I'm just like.
Yeah, right. So we were having a discussion the other day with some people, and it's like pretty much there's 2 guitar players that made the biggest impact in, well, I guess our lifetime. Jimi Hendrix first, because when he came out, nothing sounded like Jimi Hendrix. It was just like from outer space for people. Just like, what the hell is going on here? With a massive impact. And then later, Eddie Van Halen, the same thing. Mm-hmm. What the heck is going on? Like, what is he doing? But there's all the other greats in between, but that made that huge of a change on guitar. Those are the only 2.
Mm-hmm. And that was within about 10 years of each other. People don't even realize it's not that long. I told a story on my greatest guitar solos because I had Hey Joe in there, even though everybody said, oh, you should have put Along the Watchtower. But I put on Hey Joe because when my brother John and I were learning to play guitar, I'd play rhythm for him, and we'd only play Hey Joe because that was the first solo I ever learned, and that was always a great thing to play over. So we knew one scale. And I played for 10 minutes for him, and then as soon as it'd be time for me to solo, he'd get up and walk away, and we get in a fight. So my mom got sick of it. My mom was like, okay, I'll play rhythm for you. My mom was in her 50s at the time. She says, tell me the chords. I said, okay, it's C, G, D, A, E.
That's cool.
So my mom would get acoustic guitar, and my mom would play chords while I practiced soloing. My mom was so cool that awesome. She would play Hey Joe for 10 minutes straight while I worked on my soloing.
That's great. That's awesome. So, what kind of? Did she like playing guitar, or was that an?
Her dad was a guitar player, and 2 of her sisters were music teachers. They're still living. 2 of my aunts, and her brother was a musician, a bass player, and so they were all musicians in my mom's family. My mom played rudimentary guitar. I mean, she could pick up any song and learn it by ear, and. I mean, I showed her the chords once, and she's like, "Yeah, no problem." And she could strum it, and had great time. And
That's awesome.
But I mean, my mom, I'll play rhythm for you. Okay. just so I don't have to hear
That's
you guys
cool.
fight.
That's
So
amazing.
anytime I'd be like, Mom, can you play rhythm for me for a little while? I want to work on my solos. She's like, yeah, okay. Give me the guitar.
That's awesome.
Strumming away, Hey, Joe.
That's great. Yeah.
So
Great to jam with your mom.
yeah.
Speaking of that, what do you think your parents would think about your online fame and the way things have kind of?
Oh, they would love it. I wish my dad died in 2004. If he would have seen YouTube, he would have been on YouTube constantly because he was a big music lover and just would have loved it. My mom died in 2016, but she used to send me videos constantly, guitar players that she would find. She'd find these crazy classical guitar players, jazz guitar players, or Chet Atkins videos or something. My mom was she wasn't a musician, everything, but she loved all kinds of music and loved the guitar especially. So she'd find these crazy guitar players that she'd send to me, like YouTube links. I was going through my email the other day looking at emails my mom sent to me, and hundreds and hundreds of emails with videos attached to them.
Wow.
YouTube links and stuff. It was so cool. I mean, it was, and both my parents loved the fact that I was a musician,
Right.
which is very rare.
Great. Yeah, right.
They
You should have been a doctor.
Right.
Yeah, no, they were glad. I'm one of 7, and me and I'm second youngest. My younger brother, we both are guitar players, and my mom, my parents used to make us play for the whole family every day after dinner. We had to play stuff. We'd had to sit down and play like 2-3 songs at least.
That's fantastic.
So,
Great. That's killer.
Don't you wish that happened more
Today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of let's play video games. Well, I know you clearly have a big influence on your kids, or at least one of you, who's amazing, has amazing ear. Which reminds me, there was a question I'll get to. BMO asked, "Is your ear training course coming soon?"
Yes, probably next week. We're doing beta testing right now and fixing all the bugs in it. So next week will be the ear training course. Will be out, and it's been 2 years. Been working on it. So
wow, that's exciting because I could use that. But do you have that kind of influence with your kids about music and stuff like that, or?
My kids, my son Dylan, who has a ridiculously good ear, doesn't like music at all. My 2 daughters both have great ears. But my youngest is the only one that actually listens to music. She's 6. So I saw her with headphones on the other day, and I walked over. She had an iPad and she had Spotify open. I didn't even know she knew how to do. And she had a playlist. And I said, "What are you listening to?" She said, "The Police."
Nice.
And I said, "Oh, let me check it out." And she loves music, so she made her own Spotify playlist and sits there and was doing stuff on her iPad, listening to music. So maybe maybe one of them. We've got everything here. If they want to play anything, I own 10 drum sets. I've got
good.
I own 10 bass amps and I have everything you could possibly want. And my kids are not interested in music at all.
Yeah. I mean,
I remember when my oldest daughter, who's now 27, was I don't know, she was in her teens, so she must have been 15, 16 or something. And out of the blue, and this had nothing to do with me, out of the blue, her favorite band, music, because she liked music, and her favorite band, out of the blue, and I'd never shown it to her, Led Zeppelin.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh man, I love you more now. She found it, loved it, still loves it.
That's awesome.
It's great.
Yeah,
Very proud parent.
Exactly. That's rewarding. You're like, okay, I did something right. Yes.
I must have done something right.
Yeah.
First time I met Steve Vai, we were video chatted, and he had he was asking me about my son Dylan, and he told me, man, Frank would have freaked out if he saw Dylan. He said, can I talk to Dylan? I said, yeah. So I go upstairs and I was like, hey, Dylan, need you to come downstairs and talk to somebody. He's like, who? It says a guy named Steve Vai. He's a guitar player. Well, I'm busy. He's talking to my wife. And I was like, no, get downstairs and talk to him. He's a famous guitar player. He's like, I don't care. And I said, Dylan. And then my wife says, Dylan, just go downstairs and talk to this guy. Okay. Like this guy. So Dylan comes down and Steve starts asking him questions. And Dylan, this is probably about 3 years ago or so. And Dylan he's 12 now. So he's 9. And so he has a Pokemon shirt on and I introduced him to Steve, and Dylan's a really personable kid. And Steve says, do you like video games? Yeah. And he goes, my 2 sons like video games. Have you ever heard of World of Warcraft? And I was just like, oh geez. Anyway. So then Steve said, do you like the guitar? And Dylan's like, yeah, like, okay. So Steve grabs the guitar. He goes, you know what this is? A whammy bar. Right. And then Steve starts playing some stuff and for Dylan on the video chat, and Dylan's like, oh, that's kind of cool. And that's like the only time I've ever seen Dylan engaged. But I mean, if I could play as well as Steve Vai, maybe Dylan might be interested in the guitar or something. You know, it's like, I was like, man, I can't get it. I better start practicing or something, Steve. You know,
start using more a whammy bar. That's all in the whammy bar. That's what Steve was saying. He's like, once I saw the whammy bar, I knew I had to have one.
I was thinking of that when I was watching your interview with him, and I was thinking about that, talking to him that time.
Yeah, he's great. He's such a class act, that guy.
He really is. What a great guy.
Yeah.
I saw a great talk at the NAMM show with him and Vinnie Colaiuta. That was fascinating. That they hadn't seen each other in 35 years since they played with Zappa together, which was unbelievable. They both live in LA, and they I mean, they had just seen each other just before they got on stage, like a couple weeks before they ran into each other. But it had been over 30 years, and
they live like
what?
They live within miles of each other, right? That's
right.
Crazy.
Yeah.
That's wild. So I want to thank Waterford Giant. Thanks for the super chat. Appreciate it. He said, "Great show. Thanks again." Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. So here's a question that I mentioned. I was trying to think of questions that I'm not exactly sure if you've tackled, and maybe you have tackled this before. But do you think music is in our genetic, like learning an instrument and being a musician, is a genetic thing? Is it like an innate, or is it something that like a skill that you just learn? And I'm just curious.
I think that certain people are genetically predisposed to having good technique, whether they have hands like Eddie Van Halen, or they have a good innate sense of rhythm because of they're really coordinated, and they but I think that most people are can learn music. You rarely find people that are really tone deaf. I've met them, but almost, but it's.
Have you recorded them?
I've recorded plenty of them. The ones that had record deals that were singers.
Oh, wow.
Like, what key are you in? What do you mean key? I was like, never mind. But I think most people are, can learn music. So I think, but there is a genetic component. There's, I think all kids can have perfect pitch if they, or most kids can, if they develop it while they're babies. That's the only time I believe that is something that it's 1 in 10,000 people have it, but I think you have to develop it in the first 9 months of life. That's my theory. By being exposed to a lot of different kind of music that is chromatics and that uses a lot of different keys. I think that all kids can develop it. So I think that, I'm not sure how much genetics play in music ability, but definitely there's some people that just have unbelievable technique that don't have to work very hard at it. So I think some of that is definitely genetic, just like some people are fast runners, and other people are not.
Yeah, and
So
some people have a creativity in that, matched with their skill or whatever it is that they've learned as being a musician. That creativity part is really an interesting part of it. That I'm not sure if that's genetic or if it's innate, or like again if it's a learned thing. And the other thing I was curious about is why do you think it is or it seems like most of people who have written the greatest music was when they were in their young 20s or early teen, like those young age, those young ages.
okay, so I have this 30-year-old theory that most people do all their best playing and writing before they're 30.
Mm-hmm.
The Beatles no one had turned 30 when they broke up. Lennon was just about to turn 30. Harrison was 26 when they broke up. It's hard to believe they did 13 albums, and Harrison was basically in his mid-20s. Tom Petty is one of the only people that wrote great songs in their late 30s I can think of, but typically most bands had people in their 20s, and I think that people's brains are even same with improvising. I think that people can improvise better in their 20s because their brains are faster and they're able to come up with things quicker. Now historically, composers, as they got older, most of them wrote their best music, whether it was Beethoven or Bach or, a lot of classical composers wrote their best pieces, but they weren't improvising them. They were improvising as when they were young, and they were probably far better improvisers than they were later on, but they had a lifetime of experience to write the stuff. But that doesn't really go for rock musicians and songwriters, I don't think. I think a lot of it is experiences and your brain. I think you just become more jaded or something, and it's hard to write songs.
There's something about the creativity that seems to be lost after a certain age. I mean, not that people aren't creative and they can still make great music. I mean, McCartney's still making great albums into his 70s. Well, let me say not great albums. He's still making albums. I don't know if they're great. And the last one that I listened to was like Chaos, and the Chaos album that he had come out with several years ago. But yeah, I mean, you can still be making music, but is it great music? And is it really great creatively? And it seems it's, like you said, under 30. I wonder why that is. Young
brain, young music. I don't know. Petty's record that had in 1989 that had Free Fallin' on it had a lot of big hits on it. I think he was 39 years old when he did that record. Oh, wow. But he's one of the few that I can think of that was way over 30 when he did, and in his 40s when he did Wildflowers and things like that, some unbelievable records. But typically it's people in their 20s.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Dave, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's interesting how that happens too. Yeah, I mean, so why is a great band that once made great records not making still great music? Have they said everything they want to say? Are they too comfortable in their life now? Do they have no sort of strife or being poor or anything? They're too comfortable in their mansions. What the hell do they write about? It's like before. It's like, I was struggling to eat. When they were writing these records. And maybe that's some of it. Maybe I think that's some of it.
The struggle.
I mean, there's exceptions. Exceptions. Let's see. Who would that be? Aerosmith's done a bunch of records that later in life for them that were great records.
Neil Young.
There's some outside writers involved, but
there's not a lot of examples, though. I've thought a lot about this, actually.
Yeah, no. There's not a lot of good examples, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well. Then again, Alice in Chains last several records. I mean, Black Gives Way to Blue was a good record, and they're all over. I mean, Jerry's 50-something now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's a couple years younger than me.
So,
of course, they had a lot of time in between to stockpile songs, though, Dave. You know,
true.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he had, I mean, he was writing for his own solo projects, but really,
mm-hmm.
he had a lot of time to stockpile material before that record.
The Foo Fighters, their Wasting Light album. That was
Dave Grohl's that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
Dave is just constantly writing great songs. I mean, just like a machine.
Genetics.
Yeah.
Genetics, there you go.
spitting it out like it's an automatic donut maker or something, you know?
He's got the formula. He knows how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, and from what I understand, he's a very good barbecuer.
Yeah. Well, he does that stuff with Dimebag's wife, and yeah, I've seen him.
He's always cooking for someone.
Yeah. That's awesome. We've got a super chat from Modern Vintage again. Thank you. Dave, I'm going to play a 100 Deluxe tomorrow. How would you set it to sound like Jerry's JJ100 heavy tone? So many switches, combinations, and limited time.
On his heavier tone, because Jerry uses a combination of 2 amps. So one is set more gainy and one is set much lighter in gain. So saturation. All the switches in the back down except the saturation. The frequency switch on the front to the left. The response switch to the right. And then other than on the BE channel. I mean, you can probably get it from there. I mean, if you turn everything at half, you know, you're going to get in the ballpark.
Cool. Well, enjoy.
Really,
it.
To be honest, it's in his hands. No, I hate to tell you that, but man, when he just plugs into an amp, he just plays rhythm guitar and he plays all the classic riffs and stuff, and you're just like, oh yeah, that's good.
Okay, so Dave, what gauge strings does he play? Do you know?
10s, I think.
Okay.
Pretty sure. If I recall.
And he's half a step down, right?
I don't know that for a fact, but I'm pretty sure it's 10s. Yes, he's some
are even lower. I mean, some of the later stuff is down to C.
Yeah. So that's
step
a good
down
question.
And drop D.
You know, I'm not positive on all the gauges, but yeah, he does drop string. So it's like they're like half step down and then still a drop.
Wow. Yeah. Well, he's got great
I
tone.
could find out.
That's cool. Well, enjoy the amp, Modern Vintage. Have you played a Friedman amp, Rick?
Yes. Yes, I've played a few Friedman amps that are amazing, and I don't have any in my collection. I haven't bought that many amps in the last. I mean, honestly, since I stopped producing, which was 3 years ago, I pretty much stopped buying stuff, and even before that, I haven't really bought anything, not many things since probably 2005 or so. So I've had all these amps for most of them for years. I would love to have a Friedman or two in my collection, though. So
there you go.
I don't know if my wife would like me to have a Friedman or two in my collection, but you know.
Well, that's always
the guitar player that I just got an amp to said something interesting. He goes, yeah, it's really simple. So if I buy an amp, I just have to give equal value monetarily to my wife. So, and then she doesn't say anything.
There you go.
So I'm like, so what you're saying is if you buy this amp from me for, let's just say $3,000, you have to give your wife $3,000 also. He goes, yep.
Yeah, that'll prevent you from buying
this is
stuff.
a relatively professional guitar player, that is playing, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, my wife is cool about stuff. She never really mentions that much about gear or anything. She never says anything about gear. I don't even think that she notices, if anything. I had a drum set. I got a drum kit last month, and it just showed up, and she didn't say anything about it. Brought it downstairs. Not one word about it. Like, not what is that?
Right. Yeah, that's cool.
And
that's the way it should be. I mean,
right.
That's why I think so. I mean, my wife's super cool about it. The only time was recently after I had just bought that Kemper, and I've been on a slew of buying shit because I'm a gear whore, as I was telling you before we went live. And we were at Sweetwater Gear Fest, and I'm walking around with Sammy Bowler, Dave, and we go into the used or the open box tent at Sweetwater,
yeah.
and I'm thinking, because I'm a lefty, Rick, so
okay,
so I'm used to just walking into places and they don't have shit, right? There's nothing there for me to look at.
Yeah.
So, but as soon as we walked in there, Sammy's like, "Oh, dude, you see this Gibson acoustic, lefty?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, really?" It was, and he just started handing me all these guitars, but the Gibson acoustic just stuck with me. It was like the big jumbo acoustic. I can't remember the name of it right now. And I remember I texted my wife a picture of it, and I said, "What do you think?" And she wrote, "Another one?" Like that. And that was the end. I was like, "Okay, all right, you're right." So,
Mark, would you suggest? My son Dylan is a lefty. If you were to play guitar, would you suggest that he's very left-handed? Would you suggest making him learn right-handed?
That's a great question. My personal opinion on it is make him learn left-handed.
Okay.
That's my personal opinion. Because I think if it's naturally the way that they feel, then they're going to feel better as a musician and feel more comfortable about it and be more into it. If you're making somebody go against their kind of natural way of doing something just to appeal to being able to buy more guitar. I think there's a lot more lefty guitars that are available these days than it used to be back in the day. It's not like it used to be where it'd be impossible to find a lefty guitar. So I think it's fine learning lefty, personally.
It's sort of interesting when you think about that. You would think, so I'm right-handed. You would think your right hand would be the fretting hand. You would just if I'm just thinking about it, that would make sense. So that I should play a left-handed guitar, but in the same way, vice versa. So, but I guess not. It's interesting.
I think because you write with your hand, the picking motion is very much like writing with a
pen
or something.
Yeah.
So you get used to that motion, and that just kind of feels natural.
My son's left-handed. I think I need to get him a left-handed guitar.
Yeah, I think it'll help inspire them more to play. I think just back.
Sure, you got an extra, Mark.
I've got a few. I'll send you one. I it's funny because for me, I started out on drums, Rick. So, and I played open-handed. So instead of my feet are right-handed, or righty, and my hands. So I kind of play like Simon Phillips can do both.
Simon Phillips, yeah.
Yeah, but Simon Phillips tends to do that open-handed kind of stuff, and that's how I played. And then when I went to guitar, it was like it felt so natural. The rhythm hand is your hi-hat hand, and that just felt so natural to me to do that. So it was like I had that question right off the bat. Like, well, maybe I should just learn righty.
So how do you explain the guys that take the right-handed guitar and play it left-handed, strung righty? Like Eric Gales, for instance.
Well, they just take a regular guitar and they flip it upside down. You're saying?
No, I understand. I understand the concept.
I think that
holy crap, that's backwards.
It's interesting because I have a left-handed guitar that I got for my son that he never played, like a little Squire strung left-handed, and I'll pick it up and play it right-handed, and you just play such different licks, and you can bend that. You pull down on that E string, and it's amazing. You just do licks you would never think of doing.
Right. That's
true.
I
think it's really it goes with gravity,
Like I always get a big kick out of watching Eric Gales, because you watch Eric Gales play, and who's an amazing guitar player, and you just look at it, and it's just you can't watch because it's like this doesn't make sense. Wait, okay, it's upside down. Okay, wait.
Yeah. Do you know who's another guy like that? Doyle Brummel.
Yeah.
The second. Yeah. He played with Clapton. Yeah, he's really good too.
He's a great player.
Was he there at Crossroads?
He was, yeah.
Yeah. He's such a talented guy.
One of my guitar teachers in high school. My guitar teacher in high school was a lefty, and he played guitar for 10 years. A right-handed guitar flipped over, so he could play equally well on a. Then he learned how to play left-handed with a strung normally, but he could take my guitar and flip it over and play. He was a jazz player, and he could play all the weird chord both ways. It was amazing.
Wow,
that is amazing.
I mean, I have a hard enough time just playing normal. So
yeah.
I mean,
the coordination that takes is crazy. I always had a hard time. I can't play drums. I can't get the coordination right. It's not. I don't know. But maybe I could if I practiced. But
yeah, that would help.
I suppose anyone can do anything.
You could probably get it. I taught my daughter.
You practiced
it enough and banging on the drum. I don't know.
I taught my daughter how to play drums. She wasn't getting it. Like the whole, okay, well, 2 and 4, the whole thing, and try to help explain 1, 2, 3, 4, and put your foot on 1 and 2, and that whole thing. She wasn't getting it, and finally, the way I taught her was, I sat down on the chair, and just sat her on my lap, and held her hands, and put her feet with me, and I was like, just watch how I'm doing it, and she finally was able to get it by, as I was doing it with her. And then she doesn't play, but she can do a real mean 4/4. So
that's good. That's a good start.
Yeah, it was a good, at least I got her to that, so that's fun. Speaking of that, what instrument do you think people should start learning first to be the best musician they can be?
Well, I mean, the easiest one for people to learn is the piano, because you can start at 4, 4.5. That's probably the only instrument that you can start at that age. No, guitar does not work. I don't think for anyone under 7 is probably the youngest you can. There's just too many moving parts with playing guitar. Isolating the strings with a pick or even finger picking, I think it's too difficult. But violin and the violin and the piano are things that youngest kids can start at 4.5 on either one. So
yeah, that's good. That's cool. Good to know.
Yeah.
We've got a question from the Guitar Guru Network. He said, better to have a brilliant artist and a so-so producer engineer, or a so-so artist and a brilliant producer engineer?
Well, that's my friend Keith.
Yeah, I know Keith well. Yeah.
Yeah. Better to have, what is it again?
Better to have a brilliant artist and a so-so producer engineer, or a so-so artist and a brilliant producer engineer?
That's a tough one.
Yeah, how do you answer that?
Better to have a brilliant artist and a brilliant producer.
Yes.
You can't have the trade-off. That's
yeah.
Cool.
The funny thing, there's production, and then there's engineering of records and stuff, and obviously a great artist. A great example of a great artist with an awful sounding record that sold gazillions of records was Alanis Morissette.
Mm-hmm.
That first record obviously sold, I don't even know what the final tally was, but it's some ridiculous figure.
Yeah,
and
20 million something.
It's an awful sounding record.
ADATs. 3 ADATs.
Just not good. But does it matter? No, the songs were great. The songs were amazing. So sometimes people get caught up in the wrong stuff, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, although we all would love to hear great sounding records, but ultimately, in the end, the song's got to be great.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I go back to when you talk about great albums, but early Black Sabbath is just so poorly recorded, and and could just use. I don't know if they could ever go back and remaster that stuff, but I don't know. Do you have the same opinion?
I never want to hear stuff remastered generally.
No.
Okay.
Personally, keep it the way it was, because generally speaking, and this is not always, generally speaking, they tend to ruin it.
That's right.
They tend to ruin it. Now, there's been definitely some exceptions to this rule. The rule. I mean, some of the remastered stuff that Jimmy Page did with mastering engineer and stuff came out really well, and there's some exceptions out there, but generally speaking, they just ruin it.
Yeah.
I remember there was a period in time when Eddie Van Halen, and this was in his, well, shall we say his dark period, was going and deciding to remaster some of their classic records. And his big trip was pulling the compression off of them and stuff. Mm. And pulling like the compression off the master and everything, there's some of it out there. It just doesn't sound right anymore. It's just ruined.
Yeah.
It's just ruined. I mean, it's still the song, but yeah.
Yeah, I most of the stuff on Spotify, a lot of the old records that I hear remasters of are just so shrill sounding now. They just add a bunch of top end to these things, and I think the labels do it so that they can claim that they can own it gives them extra time with the masters because they consider them new masters, and I think they just do it just to do it. And most of the time they're not mastering. I mean, Universal had everything burn in a fire,
Yeah.
And they're remastering from stuff that's been put to digital in the late 80s on 16-bit, and so it's a bunch of fakery going on there. Anyways,
I wonder if there's going to be a suit eventually about that whole fire.
I don't know. They must be settling out of court with that, because I did a video on it, and YouTube really throttled it back the first week the story was out. And I was getting no views, and there was no, I was thinking, like, this is not right. They're doing this on purpose. And they announced that Universal and YouTube were partnering on some stuff, on remastering. This came out like the week that the story broke.
Wow.
They were partnering on redoing all the videos into making them, I don't know, 4K or whatever, and redoing the sound on them. So.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I know, like Jimmy Page was on this like remastering kick every couple of years with the Zeppelin stuff, it seemed, right?
Yeah, but he was doing a good job of it. It wasn't really like he wasn't ruining anything. I think he took careful time with what he was doing.
I did a mastering session with George Marino right at the time in '99 when he was doing the Zeppelin DVD stuff, and I told this story in one of my videos that he said Jimmy came in. Jimmy had all the masters in his basement, and he said all the boxes were crumbling, but these were the original mixes. And he brought them in. They baked the tapes. I think that they bake them at 250 degrees for, I don't know, 6 hours or something, that long time. And And then they did one pass on him, and put him to, through really nice converters, and then took him from digital and then mastered them in digitally. And then he took the masters. I mean, I think the masters, they arrive in an armored car and everything, and he brought him back home with him, but he had all his own masters, all the Zeppelin masters he had.
Is there a way to transfer from?
Very careful with that.
What's that, Dave?
He's very, very careful about all the Led Zeppelin, shall we say, the lineage and the history and
he should be.
And it's all very
very smart
by him.
Mm-hmm. Well, and he owns all the music, right? I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, as far as I know, he paid for the records. I know he paid for the first record for 4,300 pounds. He paid for Zeppelin 1. He paid out of his own pocket.
Wow, amazing. Can you imagine?
4,300 pounds.
4,300 pounds. He paid Glenn Johns and paid for the studio time at Olympic and all that. And
I
he
probably
owned the record.
I probably spent that much on just buying that album over the past 30
Right.
over cassette and 8-track and album and then digital and yeah. It's funny, man.
It's funny to read that stuff, though, to think that he had the foresight to do all that. It's unbelievable. That's from being a studio musician, though. He was very, very shrewd.
Yeah, yeah. Now, is there a way to, if he has the original tape, to transfer that to another set of tapes so you don't have to worry about the,
You wouldn't do that.
Yeah, you wouldn't do that. No.
It's going to have the same problem down the road. I mean, and also with the tape available. Nah.
Okay, I was just curious.
Very high resolution, digital master. Great computers.
Gotcha.
Someone was just talking about this the other day about a film editor I know is doing now. He used to be a film editor. Now he's working for Universal and on film restoration. And he was telling us all about that. And that's very interesting. It's the same concept. It's the same thing. You have this film that's deteriorating. It's falling apart. And now, I mean, you can, now, 4K, 6K, you can transfer this stuff to digital and have it still look like film. And there's a restoration process, and he was telling us all about the restoration program that he was using, which I can't remember what the name was, but there's a program that that will take the dirt off the film, and will take you have to do it. You have to be careful. You can't let it do it automatically. You have to go in and frame by frame, and some clients just want a little of the dirt removed. Other clients want it pristine. So if there's a scratch across the film, they can literally take it out, and it's perfect. It looks exactly. And it was really it was sort of intriguing, and I sort of paralleled it to the audio restoration stuff, and it's a problem. You have all this deteriorating masters, or they don't know where the masters are, or they burned. I mean, I know people that have done records that have no idea where their masters are, and nor did the record company.
Yeah.
It just doesn't exist anymore.
And then that goes back to your question I saw on one of your videos, which is probably the video we're talking about, Rick, where you were like, well, then who owns it? If you don't have the master, then do you actually own the music anymore?
Yeah, that's a question for lawyers. If you're out there exploiting this and saying that you've got remasters of it, and well, what are they really remasters? Because a remaster implies that they're made from the master. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have the master, what are they remasters of? Does somebody drop a CD in the computer and rip it off there and then master it again? I mean, what is that? Mm-hmm. It's so shady.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I mean, I personally would rather listen to stuff off CD if I have the CDs. I mean, if I had a CD player hooked up, but I still have a CD player. But I actually went to a gig last night. This is very funny. I haven't been to a gig in 10 years in Atlanta. Huh. And it was a big band that was playing. That one of my buddies was like, "Oh, you should come out and see this big band." I was like, "Man, I don't like going out and seeing music." So I go out to this thing, and there was more people in the band than in the audience. The band was like 25 people, and there's about 10 people in the audience. And they were saying it was their CD release party, and they're selling CDs there. And I turned to my buddy Jack, and I was like, dude, do you have a CD player? And he goes, no. I said, do you know anybody with a CD player? He says, no. I said, why are these guys selling CDs?
In my car.
That's it. Because they're jazz musicians.
Oh.
And I said, well, there you go.
Right. That's funny.
But the bands still sell physical copies. It's interesting. They'll still sell CDs, and people will buy them.
Yeah.
Of course, how they're going to play them later is a different story.
I think they buy them, Dave, to support the bands and everything. Then they end up as coasters.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Or you buy it and then you rip it, and now you've got your digital download, and then the CD just sits somewhere.
None of my computers have.
Well, that's the problem nowadays as well. I have a new Mac that doesn't even have. It's like nothing on the side.
I have a USB. I've got a CD player with a USB
I do too.
end on it and stuff. So.
Oh, there you go.
But I still have. I never got rid of my CDs. I still have all of them.
Smart man. You see,
Yeah.
I kept just a few of the real favorite ones, like some of the Beatles ones that I've got, and like they came out with that box set of the U.S. singles, a mono and stereo.
Yeah.
I kept a bunch of box sets and stuff like that, but then just the random stuff, I burned it all and sold it. But
I like being able to go back, because you can't find the original masters that were done on CD. Because they've been remastered so many times on Spotify and on Apple Music and everything.
Yeah.
I want to compare and hear the actual CD. I'd rather take it and rip it again from my thing and listen to them that way than listen to them off Spotify.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I
have all
what's that?
I have all the CDs still.
Oh, good for you guys.
That I ever bought. Well, actually, some are lost along the way, but that I bought relatively. What I wish I had was all the vinyl I had when I was a kid, and because in recent times I had hooked up a vinyl setup again, and God, that sounds good.
It does. It really is the
minute you put on the real original pressing of something, like from, say, Van Halen 2, and you listen to it on the turntable through the speakers, through the old receiver, and you listen to it and you're like, oh yeah, that's what I remember in my head. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
I have Van Halen 2, and I have all my original LPs. I've got Van Halen 2. I've got them. I've got those first 4 records on LP sitting in the next room. Mm-hmm. And I don't have my turntable hooked up right now, but actually, no, I do. I have it hooked up right over there. But
it makes a difference.
I love listening to vinyl, and I would play it for my kids all the time. We listen to vinyl. I thought it was fascinating. I have a 2-inch machine here in my studio as well, which is great.
Oh, nice.
I've done many records on 2-inch. So,
and
I have a reverb. I have a plate reverb even. I mean, I'm
EMT.
Yeah, I know, just an old like one from the '60s. It was a custom made one somebody gave me, but it works.
But the 2-inch tape, where do you find your tape? It's expensive, right?
Yeah, well, now that I'm not producing, I'm not buying any, but I have a few reels that I bought, and I bought a Vintage King back. God, it's been priced. I haven't cracked open a roll, and it's been 3 years actually since the last time I did a session on tape and everything, and but people that say, oh yeah, well, digital sounds as good as tape, is like, have you ever actually used a tape machine? Because it doesn't sound as good as tape.
Yeah, you're not going to say that, by the way, if you do.
I mean, I did a video where I actually had drum tracks that were tracked into Pro Tools and off of tape. I don't mean not through the tape machine, but put to the tape machine, and then put back into Pro Tools, and then listen to them back to back, and it's pretty dramatic, the tape compression that happens if you hit the tape hard. And
Mm-hmm.
They don't even look the same. You can't. The transients look completely different, and it just sounds so different. It sounds so much better.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, yes. So what we've done is made everything harder for us.
right.
So it used to be we have a tape machine and a console, and pretty much you put the mics on something and roll up the fader, and you're already pretty much there. And now it's like, oh, God, I got to move that mic. I got to. Okay, yeah, all right, yeah, no.
I always find that the when you record a digital with vocals, you get these weird artifacts that are so harsh sounding. And I always used to think, why is it none of the records that I listened to that were recorded to tape, none of them have those weird artifacts on them? Mm-hmm. This whistle, for the 4K whistle, as I call it, that you're hyper, doing all this notch filtering to try and get rid of these things, and
Did you
really
ever
weird out of tune artifacts.
Do you ever have guys when you were recording want to use digital, for their guitar, and not real amps? I'm just curious. Are you talking them out of it?
No. Because pretty much most of the projects that I would do, they'd come here. I told them not to bring their gear.
Yeah.
Unless they were a drummer that had a really weird setup, but that's why I've got so many instruments. I can set up any kind of kit. I have 26, 24, 22 inch kick drums, multiple, I've got 10 drum sets here, so
what do you need to bring? Yeah. What do they need to bring their gear for?
They don't need to bring anything. I can cover any kind of setup with any size toms or anything.
All right. Bring your guitar. You're good.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, I know
I would never like to have people playing my guitars. You get these guys that come in, they'll play my guitar for 20 seconds, and then the strings are rusted. That would drive me nuts. It's like, what did you just do to my guitar?
Yeah, that's a personal thing,
Yeah,
I agree with that.
Oh yeah, my hands sweat a lot. Like sweat? What do you? They turn strings to rust.
Yeah,
acid hands. Yeah,
acid hands.
I don't have that, thankfully.
Steve Lukather is like that.
Is he?
Yes, I remember years ago when I was a kid working for Andy Brower Studio Rentals, who he was a client. We had to restring his guitars, and literally after forget the whole session, forget it. The strings are literally rusted. Like they've been on the guitar for 10 years. Like
wow.
Just caked on. We'd always look at it and go,
what?
He was at the session for 2 hours. And the strings look like they've been on for 15 years.
Right.
Sitting outside in the rain.
Amazing.
It was shocking.
And sitting in salt water.
Right.
Yeah. Shocking.
Wow. That's amazing.
Man.
Yeah, I can't wait to get him on the show. So, going back to the top 3 guests that you were talking about before, Rick, for our show, Jimmy Page. I know, Dave, you want him on.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. I mean, it's just,
I wish.
I want Floyd Rose on. I really want to talk to Floyd Rose because he changed the game, and he's a big innovator. But Steve Lukather.
Mm-hmm.
I want to have him on. I know he's just on the road all the time.
He's on the road all the time. He said yes to me, but he's constantly on the road, and I just would be easier to catch him when he's home. I'll work on that again.
Yeah, no, we'll get him eventually. He won't be. Yeah. He's going to get tired eventually. he'll come home. But hey, I know we're running on like almost 2 hours and 40 minutes here. We still have 214 people watching. Everybody's really hanging in there listening to us. You guys are awesome. It's getting late. How are you, Rick? You all right?
Well, I'm okay for a few more minutes.
Okay. All right. You let me know when you're ready to roll. So another question I had for you was, how do you pick the songs for what makes the song great series, or for your topics on your channel?
Usually those songs, it depends on what mood I'm in. I usually will pick songs that I did the Chili Peppers yesterday. I don't know, I wanted to hear the Chili Peppers, and so I was like, okay, what do I got? And I try to find songs that are I usually do with the bands that a lot of times I'll do two songs by a band. I'll do their most popular song, then I'll do a song that I want to do. So I did Under the Bridge yesterday because it's a very important, one of the most important songs of the 90s, I thought. And and there's a lot of really great hidden stuff in the track. A lot of it that Brendan O'Brien actually played. There's organ, there's piano, there's beyond the female vocals that happen in the end. There's a lot of overdubs that are there. The tune is very sparse until the end. Plus, it has a very weird form because it goes to the out chorus. After the second chorus, it goes right to the out chorus vamp, and it's really unusual form. So, but I typically just do songs that I'm in the mood for. I might do. I want to do a Judas Priest song, and I'm going to do this XTC song. I don't know. I just like to really vary it. I've done Periphery. I've done a lot of newer bands, and I did a band called Pliny. That's a band from Australia. That's the guitar player's 26, instrumental prog metal band. That's really great. So I've done a lot of different.
Yeah, you've been all over the map. Yeah. But I know that you're limited also because there are blockers. There are these bands that will take it down. So you're limited in that sense.
Well, it's interesting. Like I've done ones that have gotten blocked and then they got put back up. Like I did Whole Lotta Love, and it was up for about 5 weeks. It got blocked and then it got put back up. And I talked to somebody I don't know where it was, at Warner or something, and they said that it had been someone from the band that okayed it to go back on YouTube. I had Yes was taken down, and I wrote to John Anderson and told him that, after it had been up for a couple months, it got taken down. It got put back up. I assume it was because of him. So the only one that's ever gotten taken down and not put back up was this Fleetwood Mac. I did Go Your Own Way, and I've I tweeted at Lindsey Buckingham a number of times. Radiohead took my video down. They put it back up. I went on Twitter and called them sellouts. And I said, Radiohead's just another corporate rock band now. Look at that. And I did at Tom York at Radiohead, a few things like that. And then a few weeks later, mysteriously reappeared on the,
wow,
on my channel. So hopefully Fleetwood Mac will put it back on, but they're the only other blocker. I mean, I haven't done Pink Floyd. I haven't done The Who. I don't want to spend 16 hours on a video and have it get pulled down immediately. Queen. I mean, it's ridiculous. I haven't done these things, but the Eagles are 100% blockers. Guns N' Roses, everything, instant block.
It's amazing because it's just more exposure for them. And they're not preventing anything from happening.
No, I mean, it gets demonetized. It gets monetized to them. So I spend 16 hours making a video. They make all the money off it. I'm not even trying to make money off it. They all get demonetized. Every one of those videos do, except for the Tool videos that I did. Tool, actually, the two videos, not only did Tool shared my two videos that I did of theirs on their website, on their Facebook, and on the Tool website, and they were monetized. And Tom Petty's estate let me monetize the videos, which is amazing.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
well, that's good to hear that the Tool guys are nice and
they were great.
Yeah, I actually
totally cool.
I'm friends with the guy who does their art for their albums and their tour posters and stuff like that. Amazing,
cool,
amazing artist.
Yeah,
so cool stuff. Yeah, it's amazing how these bands are just pulling stuff down and blocking, and so everything you do is demonetized. All your videos.
No, What Makes This Song Great is.
Wow.
I mean, not everyone, but out of the 75 I've done, 72 are demonetized or whatever. 71 are demonetized.
Wow.
So
yeah.
instantly, and a lot of the videos, like I did the 20 top 20 solos of all time, and I played all the solos myself, and I had 20 demonetization things. So even me recreating them got blocks. Or I mean, not got blocks, but got demonetized. So 20 different artists are making money, are splitting the money off my video, the 700,000 views or whatever I've had so far.
Wow.
So they're all making a few cents.
So that's YouTube paying them. That's how that works.
Yeah. YouTube keeps 40% of the money anyways.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. I mean,
and then
I know that from our channel.
Yeah.
And also whatever super chat money you get as well, they keep that as well.
Yeah. Keep a percentage of it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. 30%.
So it's but I decided early in my channel I wasn't going to be limited by what I did by worrying about whether the video's monetized or not. I didn't care. So once I realized, I figured that out, I was like, I want to teach what I want to teach or talk about what I want to talk about. I don't care if the video gets demonetized. Mm-hmm. So it's very freeing. The only thing I care about is blocking, because demonetization, no problem. Blocking, that's censorship, and they shouldn't be able to do that. I don't think. I think it's BS.
All right.
I agree with you. And so when a lot of your content is being demonetized and you're full-time on your channel, so I know you've got your Beato Club and the Beato book, and do you want to talk about that stuff as we're getting towards the end and promote?
No, I mean that's pretty much. I make money on selling my book, and I sell coffee mugs and T-shirts, and I have a Beato Club, and that's, and then I got my ear training course coming out, so that's pretty much how I make a living. And I mean, all the stuff that you see here that people see, it's most of it I've had that I've collected over the last 30 years and everything, and not everything. I've got a few things that are newer, but for the most part, most of it is stuff that I've had. I've got another 15 amps in my studio that's down the hall here that I can't fit in this room, and I have the world's most expensive backdrop there. People think I'm in front of a green screen, which I think is very funny.
Really?
It's like, this is a green screen, right? I said, what are you talking about?
Studio.
And then sometimes I'll walk back there and people are like, wait a minute, those are actually real? I'm like, yeah. What?
Really?
People think I'm in front of a green screen, that I've got that's a Guitar Center or something back there or whatever. Come on.
That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Crazy.
Yeah. Like you would have a green screen. Rick Osusa says he gave us a super chat. Thank you. Our studio has 16-track 2-inch machine. However, we don't have much analog outboard gear beyond 500 series mic pre's. Can we expect to make more? Wait, I'm sorry. Let me read that again. Can we expect to make great recordings with only tape machine, 7 pre's, and a state-of-the-art UAD setup?
You'd be better off if you had 16 mic pre's, and then take those 7 and buy some BAE Neve copies, which are great. Mm-hmm. I love BAE stuff. And you'd be better off. It's nice when you can go to tape and you can actually EQ before you go to tape. Try and get the stuff as close as possible to how it's going to sound, because it does come back a little bit darker and stuff. And so anyways, that's the only thing I would say on that, is to have as many mic pre's as you have inputs on your tape machine. I think that's me.
Yeah.
Dave, if I were to get one of your amps, what amp am I missing back here that I need to get out of all your amps? Come on, there must be one that you say, okay, yeah, you need this.
Well, considering most of the stuff except for the PV, I mean, B100 Deluxe, our new thing, is probably the most versatile.
There you go.
Of all that, But then again, if you wanted something simple that's pretty classic, the Dirty Shirley amp we have is pretty cool.
There you go.
A little more classic sounding, one channel, kind of simplistic. One of those two.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, I love the Dirty Shirley too. That's a great sounding amp.
I just needed an excuse, Dave.
What's your favorite?
I needed some input and a little and an excuse. Well, Dave said that I
There you go. Yeah, it's your wife.
Right. Exactly.
Look, and it's on tape. It's on video.
Right. I'm missing something, and it was I have the evidence.
There you go.
Here.
It's on video. It's a proof forever. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
So, out of all your amps, Rick, what's your do you have a favorite?
I don't know. I don't know. I like them. It's different ones in different days.
Mm-hmm. Good answer.
I used my JCM 800 yesterday for my Chili Peppers video, and I used my High Watt Custom 50 for video the other day, and I mean, it really just depends.
Mm-hmm.
I like to switch it up. I like to use different stuff, and I like miking cabinets, and I just love this. I love having a lot of different amplifiers. They all kind of do their one thing that I mean, I have a lot of pedals and everything, but I like it when the amp does most of the work, to be honest with you.
So do I. Yeah, so do I. I'm not really into distortion pedals and going on the clean channel or even pushing an amp. Like if it can do it all from the amp, I don't even need to push it, with a boost or anything like that. I'd rather not.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is, but
I have an assistant that had never played through a real amp when he got here, and he went to school for guitar. He only played through modelers, and he was. Wow. I said, hey, can you plug in that MXR flanger? Because I have a flanger about 1978. I was doing a Van Halen thing, and so he plugged the input of the flanger into the amp, and I was like, and I said, dude, what's up with this? Like, what? He had no idea how to plug in effects pedals. It was unbelievable. I was like, man, you're in the wrong studio here.
Right, exactly.
Like, we got to go through some basics with how to plug in pedals and and how the stuff works. But when he heard the the real things through speakers, he was just blown away.
It's a whole.
It's like, wow, it's amazing.
Well, you know what? I love your quote. I can't even begin to contemplate that. It's like I get that all the time, and people, I bought one. I have one of your amps. It's my first tube amp. So I have a question. I'm like, what? First tube amp? Okay, and then some question that I just put my head in my hands, kind of like, oh God. I sometimes think with people asking me questions about their amps, I sometimes occasionally get the feeling that maybe there should be a license. You should have a driver's license for your amplifier a little bit. You should have to pass the test before you actually get to have this amplifier. Or maybe you should start with a cheaper little tube amp to start and work your way up to the Ferrari you just bought. Because it's some of the questions are just wow, okay, sure, I'll answer this, but you should really know this.
I saw one of the most amazing questions on the Kemper forum the other day. Someone asked, will the floorboard version of the Kemper sound different than the rack version of the Kemper? I was like, why would it sound any different? It's the same freaking software. Like, what are you talking?
Ones and zeros.
Right? What are you talking about? Yeah, that made me crack up. I was kind of like, wow.
Dave, let me ask you this question. If I have with my Tone King reactive load here, when I turn it all the way down as a line out, and I run it through a cab sim pedal here, I mean, it's not going to hurt the transformer or anything, right? I mean, it's a reactive load, and
well, is it the big Tone King heavy one?
Yeah, the big one. Yeah, the 100-watt one.
It should
Iron
be fine.
Man
It's
2.
not really. It's not. It is a reactive load to some extent. It's not. It's not really a reactive load.
Okay.
It's well, it is.
I mean, am I going to damage the transformer?
If you're going to do that kind of thing, I would recommend, like the Sir one reactive load, or there's one from this company in Russia called Saint Rock or something. I think
I've got it. I've got
Michael
that
Nielsen.
one. I have it.
That one's great.
It's cheaper too.
I think
it's a good
the
price.
easiest to use is the newer Sir one because it's already got some IRs loaded in it already, or you can load your own, but it's already got some stuff loaded in it already, and it works really well for that kind of thing. The newer Sir load box though.
Well, I had a friend lent me that pedal, that Cab Zeus thing, and I didn't know how to try it out.
I mean, it'll.
It's not going to damage anything.
Yeah, what you can do with that is you should be able to. So does that have? I'm not sure about that pedal. So does it have a speaker level in at all? Yes. No.
No.
It's just line level in.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yep. Looks like it. Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, if any of your amps have a line out on them, you can take a line out into it and keep the amp running to a cabinet. Some of your amps have a line out on it, I think.
Yeah, a couple of them do. Most of them. Yeah, a few of them do.
You have a JCM 800 over there?
Yeah.
That should have a line out. If it's an older one, it should have a line out in the back. You just run it to a cabinet, take the line out into that box, and you can make a comparison between the cabinet and the IR.
Yeah.
Because you can do them in real time, same time.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a video right there.
There you go.
Interesting. That's cool.
Yeah, so.
That's cool. Let me see if there's any other questions, and because I know it's getting late. I have to work tomorrow, and it's not West Coast Dave time like Dave.
Sorry.
No, I think we've reached the questions. I think we've had a great discussion, Rick. Somebody just sent in a question, right as you want to get it, Dave?
Yeah, so tips for a higher gain. Servando Flores said tips for a tighter high gain tone from the Dirty Shirley. I know it's a saggy amp because of the tube rectifier, but I want to ask anyway. Boost, BOD. Dirty Shirley, yeah, our Buxom Boost. It has a high pass filter on it called the tight knob, and if you use that, and maybe you might. It's interesting. So that has an EQ on it and a tight knob. So you have a boost knob. You have a tight knob, which is a high-pass filter, and then you have an EQ section. The EQ section you can use or not use. There's a switch on it. You can take it in and out. The EQ, the treble is boost and cut, but the mid and bass are boost only. So flat for mid and bass is all the way down to 0, and flat for the treble is center. So if you want to make it a treble booster, you can do that.
Wow.
If you want to make it, you can tighten up the low end with the tight knob and then boost the treble so it's, searing. You can totally do that. And actually with the Dirty Shirley, it's incredible sounding because you get this tight thing, but you get this little bit of a tube rectifier saggy thing going on with that. And it's just, the combination is just great. So there you go. There's your answer.
Nice.
Awesome.
Super cool. Well, we had a comment from Richard Friend, and I'll leave it with his comment. He said, "This show is so amazing, really." Oh no, I'm sorry, Richard. I was. Well, I'll read it anyway. He said, "This show is so amazing. Really a shame there aren't more viewers for these. The Steve Vai live stream was amazing, though. Thank you." That's not the one I wanted to read, though. But thanks for your comment, though. There was one that said, "This has been a great show, and Rick's been an amazing guest," but I somehow lost it in this chat that's moving super fast in front of me. So, you have been a great guest, Rick. So,
Thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate you guys having me on.
You know, the funny thing you say, you know, Richard, you were talking about the number of viewers and stuff. It also has to do with what time we put it on. You know, it's a tough one because I work all day. It's hard for me to do things earlier. And, you know, on East Coast time, it's kind of late for people. And often it's on a Friday night. We do shows a lot. Tonight's a Monday night. You know, but in the end, people go back and generally have long shows. So sometimes people can't even sit still that long to watch it. But they do go back to listen to it. I have people, even in podcast format, they go back and listen to the show. And they'll have it on in background at their work and, you know, and listening to us. I can't believe you guys do this, but thank you.
Yeah, believe me. I mean,
You know?
when people write in and say they love the show and stuff, and it really it goes a long way with me because I really appreciate it, you know. And we have great guests like Rick, just, you know, taking their time to spend time with us, which is fantastic.
Maybe if we did Sunday morning shows or something, you'd get, you know, more live viewers. I don't know, but you know, it's a tough one to figure out.
Yeah, but you know, at the end of the day, we don't have 1 million subscribers. I wish we did, but our views are actually pretty good, compared to.
Well, I always say, you guys, you get them one at a time, you know.
Yeah, exactly. It'll come.
So,
I'm not worried about it, you know.
Yeah.
But it's all good. I mean, we've.
Or if you know, if you get your show shared on 1 million news channels because of something a guest said. You know, that's always nice too.
Yeah.
Like, how many views does the Jakey Lee video have?
Yeah, I mean, it's got
it's big, pretty big views.
Yeah, because he
got shared on every news outlet.
He let it rip. Did you see that episode or hear about it, Rick?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Quite funny, especially when, you know, and Nikki Sixx is like swiping him in Twitter and stuff. I'm like, oh my God, how did this happen?
Well, the funny thing is, like, was it you that sent it to me, Mark? It's like he said all this same thing in 1980 something in Krang magazine.
He did. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, that's you said it, right?
Yeah. I actually someone actually sent me the article. Yeah.
Of the magazine, and it was 1981 or something, which is, you know, just like after this happened, and he said the exact same things with even more detail.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy, but yeah, you know, I'm glad it still made the news. What can I tell you? So
there you go.
But well, Rick, thanks again. Everybody, check out Everything Music, Rick's channel. He's got great stuff. I'm sure everybody who's watching is subscribed already, but if you're not, check it out. And Dave, I hope you have a great week.
Yeah, we'd also like to thank Sweetwater Music, of course, for our show. If you guys are looking for anything, you know, please check them out, and there should be links below in the videos. So
I will put links below for buying stuff at Sweetwater. Make sure you check them out, definitely. All right, guys. Rick, just hang on after I hang up with, and we'll say our goodbyes offline. And I hope everybody has a great week. Thank you for tuning in. You guys are fantastic. Really appreciate it. And we'll talk soon. And our next guest actually is on the 25th. I believe it's the 25th. Let me look at my calendar here. Just want to make sure it's Santiago Alvarez, who worked for Marshall for many years. So and that's on the 25th. So 2 Fridays. All right, guys, take care.
all righty.